The time is 6:30 and we'll call this regular board meeting of the Charles City Board of Education to order and have roll call, please.
Dyke.
Present.
Walker absent. Frisbee.
Present.
Maycumber.
Here.
Winnering.
Here.
Agenda item 1 is to approve the agenda. Do we have any
I'll make a motion
additions
to
or
accept
corrections,
the-
Dr. Cox?
No.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. If there's no discussion, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Winnering.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes. Motion carried 4-0. Agenda item 2 is to welcome the visitors and allow public comment. On behalf of the fellow board members, at this time I would like to invite any member of the audience to step to the microphone with comments about items of interest or concern that do not appear on this evening's agenda. If you're here to talk about the public forum cost-saving measures, you will have plenty of opportunity to do that when we get to that agenda item. Is there anyone who would like to speak about items not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3, comments by board members and superintendent. Dr. Cox?
Thank you. We are hosting a jazz festival right now at the middle school, and we've got 9 schools taking part with 11 bands performing. Charles City's Jazz Ensemble performs tonight at 9 o'clock in the auditorium, so if we finish here early, I encourage you to go over and take a watch. And secondly, on food service, we found a closer location, so we will be visiting Casson, Minnesota on February the 5th.
Thank you. Any board members have comments this evening?
I'd just like to make a comment that 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I joined Charles City Kiwanis, and I'm looking forward to participating in their functions.
Very good. Any other comments by board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4, middle school construction financing. We have Matt Gillespie from Piper Jaffray here to review the materials that was in our board packet. Mr. Gillespie?
Good evening. I think Terry already gave you all a copy of that presentation, and I have met all of you before, but just to reiterate, and for those that are here in the audience, my name is Matt Gillespie from Piper Jaffray in Des Moines, and this packet of information that's here before you, you've seen this all before. It's just updated, so the actual worksheets themselves, the format, etc., are things that you've seen in the past, but Terry and I have been working in the last month or so on updating it, so that's what we're going to go through. Some of it I'm going to skip through fairly quickly because I think you understand it, but if you don't, stop and ask questions. There's no reason that we can't go through any part of it in more detail. The first section beyond the first 2 pages is just showing you the existing 2013 sales tax bonds. So this is just reiterating that the district did issue $10 million of sales tax bonds almost 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, and that's the result of that transaction. So of course that money is available for the project. You go to page number 2, excuse me, and again you've seen this before. This is where you have to get your glasses out. I had to go back to my car to get mine. The top table of course is showing you your enrollment between 2001 and 2014. This is the resident student enrollment. So this is where the students' houses are located. Sales tax is paid to you by where the student's home is, not by where the student goes to school. So that's what this table is showing you. The table on the left side of that page is just showing you a very long period of time from 1987 to 2014, a history of taxable retail sales history across the state of Iowa. Although at the very bottom there are several different averages. They are just averages. They don't necessarily mean anything going forward because they're just random points of time. It doesn't mean that the future is what the past is going to be like. But you can see from those averages that with the exception of the last 5-year period, which we've been in sort of an economic downturn that hopefully has begun to improve now, you can see in those 10, 15, 20, and 25-year averages, retail sales growth across the state has been somewhere between about 2% and 3%. And that's just included here to support the theory that we're using 2% as the growth going forward. But of course, as in the past, the school board can change that. It's just a number that we're using for projections. If that projection is inaccurate, which it will be from time to time, but we're looking at a long period of time and making the assumption that we will see approximately 2% growth through 2030 when the sales tax ends. But you can tell me to change that. Right in the middle, towards the top, there's a smaller table titled Prior Enrollment Trend. So that's just pulling those enrollment numbers from the top table down and showing you an average, or excuse me, a year-to-year gain or loss. And then at the very bottom, again, it's averaging the period from 2001 to 2014. And you can see in that average, you've lost about 15 resident students per year. But again, I'll reiterate that that doesn't mean that that's what the future is. That's just one period of time. We could have picked the last 3 years, or the last 2 years, or 6 years, or 9 years, and come up with a totally different number. So it's really more important to know what does the school board or what does the community think is going to happen with enrollment, resident enrollment. And in that gray box, you see that we're assuming for going forward that you're losing 5 students every year. And that means that you're losing the revenue, the sales tax revenue from those 5 students as well. So anytime the school board wants to change that assumption as well, we can make that change. But for tonight, that's the assumption that we're making. Below that table in the little box is just showing you actual revenues that the district has been paid from 2004 through 2014, and then an estimate for what you will be paid in fiscal year 15. Probably most importantly, the revenue per student number that you see in the very far right column has grown from around $432 per student in fiscal year 4 to this current year, the estimated number from the Department of Revenue around $919 per student. Primarily, that is because the tax was made statewide in 2008. So now you are getting money from those what we call retail rich counties. And every student in every school in every county, last year was the first year, this is the second year, everyone's getting the same amount of money per student now. So it doesn't matter where you live in the state, you should be generating the same amount per student from sales tax. And then the tables on the right side of that page, A and B, the table A is showing in the future, under the assumption that you lose 5 students annually and that revenues grow by 2% statewide, you can see what your total enrollment might be, and then in the far right column, what your total revenue might be from sales tax. Again, this current fiscal year, around $1.46 million, and if this is accurate, which again, it won't be 100% accurate, it may be better, it may be slightly worse, but hopefully it'll be close to this, and hopefully it'll actually be better because you will gain students. That's what everyone hopes. But even with the loss of the students, if revenues grow by about 2%, you would be generating about almost $1.8 million per year. Again, that's versus the $1.4 million that you're generating this year. The table at the bottom of that page, in the bottom right corner, there's a very light shaded B there. That's actually only used at one point in time, and that's when and if you go and borrow money. And so that table holds everything constant. There are no growth or losses of students, and there's no growth or loss in revenue statewide, so that you're always getting the same amount of money that you're getting this year. Or in this case, it's actually projected next year. In this particular worksheet, we're going to use next year's enrollment, which is the October 14 enrollment, because remember, we're a year behind with that count. So the 14 enrollment is used for fiscal year 15-16. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but if the sales tax bonds, the remaining sales tax bonds are sold after July 1, we have to use that new enrollment number, which is the down 46 students. But the point is we're holding everything constant so that I can do some calculations that show the bond attorneys, the bond purchasers, Standard & Poor's, rating agencies, that if X, you can still afford to pay the bonds back so that we make sure that we have enough coverage on those bonds. Any questions about that before we go to the next section? Okay, so then we come to the section that is the funding assumptions for the remaining project, and it has been assumed and still is assumed that you will issue another series of sales tax revenue bonds and then also PEPL capital loan notes. So the PEPL PPEL is physical plant and equipment levy. Those are backed by property taxes as opposed to sales tax, so generally you're going to see lower interest rates on that. The page beyond that, at the very top right corner, it says in a little box, sales tax revenue bonds. So this is, excuse me, this is the sales tax assumption. And you can see in the top left corner of that big box, there's a note that says that it's assumed that these are dated November 1 of this fall, winter. Now, we can sell them anytime now, It's not assumed that you will need the money from a cash flow standpoint until closer to around November 1. So therefore, we designed this so that you're not selling the debt until you know it's closer to when you need it. But there are a couple options you can have to sell the debt sooner. The sooner you sell the debt, the sooner you lock in the interest rate, if you think that interest rates are going to go up. But the sooner you sell the debt, or I should say, and the sooner you sell the debt, if it's before July 1, we have the option of using the October 2013 enrollment number, which allows you to borrow more because it's based off of that higher number, but that does not mean you should do it. That's the board's decision. But you know that the count is down, and therefore, if nothing ever gets better or worse and everything stays stagnant, you know that the revenues are down from what they would have been this year or previously. So the question becomes, do you really want to borrow more based off of that higher number, knowing that revenues are likely to be down? That's your option. According to the way the bond attorney reads the code, we can do either one. But this assumes you're selling the bond sometime after July 1, in particular, just before November 1. The interest rates that you see in the third from the left column, there's a little note that shows you that those interest rates were based, when we created this originally, about 50 basis points above, so that's 0.5% above what the Sioux City School District actually received. So I just took their rates and increased them by 0.5%, just to assume that interest rates will and have risen a little bit. So in other words, in that 2017 maturity, they were receiving about 0.5%. And I increased it by 0.5. And in the very last maturity in 2029, where you see 3.65, they were actually getting around 3.15. And they would still be closer today to Sioux City's interest rates than what this shows. But again, I'm still making that sort of conservative assumption that interest rates rise a little bit. Now, if they don't rise, and it comes to the point in time when you're actually selling the bonds, even though this worksheet shows you borrowing a total of $4.2 million, if you look at the total of the principal column, you'd be able to issue more bonds. You're not restricted just because on some piece of paper on this particular date and time, I said $4.2 million. If the numbers allow you, the interest rates allow you to borrow more, you can borrow more, and vice versa. If interest rates have risen even more than what I'm showing here, then you can borrow less. So it's just a factor of where the interest rates are at the time you sell those bonds. Now, how do we know, at least under these circumstances, that this is the amount you can borrow? Because in the very three right columns, the very far right column, you see a number, with the exception of the first two, that number is right around 1.2. In the next column from the right, so the second from the right, there's a number that's basically 1,418,000. And at the top of that column, you see that B. That B is reminding you that this is taken from Table B, where we hold everything stagnant. So obviously you're not going to receive $1,418,000 each and every year for the next 14 years, but that's what we have to assume. You hopefully will receive more, but you could receive less. But at the moment we sell the bonds, I have to lock that number in, and then we're saying when we combine the existing $10 million bond payment plus this roughly $4.2 million bond payment together, the bond payments total about $1.2 million, just under $1.2 million. And if you look at that as a factor of the $1.4 million revenue, you have $1.20 in revenue coming in from the tax for every dollar you owe. And we call that coverage, or we'd say you'd have 1.2 times coverage. And that not only is not a legal limit, but it's the standard across the state for the maximum amount that a school would borrow. So you're in the same situation that pretty much every school is in. But also, when you issued the bonds in 2013, the district actually agreed that that would be the limit in the future. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't borrow more. You can borrow more, but if you borrowed more, then it's subordinated debt. So it'd be just like you or I going and getting a second mortgage on our house. It's legal, you can do it, but if somebody was willing to loan you the money, you'd pay higher interest rates and higher fees, just like you'd expect with your own financing. So we're not assuming that that's not necessary. We don't think that's going to happen, not needed to happen, but just so you know, this is just the standard maximum. If you go to the page after that, top right corner here says General Obligation Capital Loan Notes. So these are the PEPL notes. Again, we're assuming that you're issuing these fall. You could issue them sooner, you could issue them later. It's up for you. I think you're going to be making some decisions about that tonight probably. In the top right corner of the page, though, there's some things that can still change. First of all, right under the box where it says General Obligation Capital Loan Notes, you see a note that says 2014 taxable valuation of $547.6 million. So that's the new taxable valuation of your school district. That's the assessed value after rollback has been applied, and it's that number that will be used in fiscal year 15-16 to calculate your PEPAL levies, and if you had a debt service levy from a bond, which you don't, but if you did, it'd be that same value that we'd use to calculate those levies. So we're going to use that number to calculate your $1.34 revenue. You have a $1.34 voted PEPAL, and you can see that that will generate about $733,000 in the upcoming fiscal year. Let's step back for just a second. You don't have to sell these in November, because if you sell the sales tax bonds, you're going to get another $4 million of money. So maybe you would choose to push this off even further, because you don't need that money right away. You can do that, but once we go past January of 2016, we would then be using the 2015 taxable valuation. It may go up and it may go down. We don't know what will happen. It's a crystal ball, of course, and if it goes down, then that $1.34 will generate less money. If it goes up, the $1.34 will generate more, so you could borrow more or less after January 1. Right below that, the note that says 2012 income taxes paid by Charles City School District taxpayers. We're still using the 2012 number because that's still the most recent number that has been published by the Department of Revenue. As soon as they publish the 2013 number, it may be higher, it may be lower, we have to start using that number. So we watch, I don't watch every day, but every time Terry calls me for updates, I look to see. Once that number becomes published, we have to use it. The importance is that your voted PEPAL language, when you voted it now about 5 years ago, it included a component of income surtax, which means that the school board must levy a minimum of 1% income surtax as part of that $1.34 revenue generation. And it has to be levied in 1% increments. You can't just levy a 0.5% or 1.2%. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 20%. So this is assuming this PEPAL borrowing, you can't borrow from the income surtax. Should point that out. So that's why it's so important. 1% of that $8.8 million, so that's the income taxes that were paid by your residents. Not the revenue, not their salaries, it's the income taxes they paid to the state of Iowa, $8.8 million. So 1% of that is $88,450. You won't be able to use that amount as a loan payment when we size the amount that you can borrow from PEPAL. So we're taking the total $1.34 generation of $733,000 and subtracting the $88,000, or whatever that number eventually is when you sell the notes, so that the payment cannot exceed that $645,000 figure that you see in that box. So that's the rationale for not having a $1.34 be the amount that you're borrowing against, but in this case it's a dollar amount, and it happens to be, you can see in the far right column, it's consuming about $1.17 of the $1.34. So that extra $88,000 it's still yours, and you're going to get it. You can spend it, you just can't commit it to a borrowing. And that $88,000 is actually included in the cash flows that we're going to get to just after this. So looking at the main box, the amortization schedule for the PEPAL notes, you can see interest rates. Again, they're estimated. If it was today, they would be lower than this. I'm intentionally using interest rates that are a little bit higher, just because you're probably not doing this till later this summer or this fall, and interest rates may rise. They could rise more, they can decline from what this shows. And again, that will affect the actual amount you can borrow. But currently we assume it's about $3.1 million. So then you can see the total of the 2013 sales tax bonds, and I'm in the bottom left side of that page now, the $9.08 million. The estimated total of the 2015 sales tax bonds, $4.16 million, combined with the PEPAL note, total about $16.3 million. And then we know that your project is, if you approve this tonight or in the near future, around $18.7 million. So that means the deficit has to be funded from some other source, which you have cash from sales tax and or PEPAL that you have now or that you will have accumulated throughout the project. And that amount currently is about $2.37 million. That number is larger than what it was the last time I was here because we weren't using the new enrollment number because your enrollment went down after I was here, and therefore we have to start using that number. So that's the significant part, although the PEPAL, not a big deal, but it actually went up a little bit because your taxable valuation actually went up, which is a good thing, so that allowed you to borrow a little bit more from the PEPAL, but you're borrowing significantly less from the sales tax, so combined that cash contribution is more than what you saw the last time that you were here. Does that make sense? So none of this requires a voted property tax increase. The sales tax, of course, is just sales tax. The PEPL is a levy that the voters have already approved, and they've already given you the authority to levy. So it's not a new tax or any kind of vote that is required from the community. The school board has the authority from these two sources to borrow, just like every other school district in the state, at any time they feel there's a need to do that. So you could tell me tonight, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, this is really what we want to do. Let's go forward and do this. That's your prerogative to do that. Questions about that? Okay, the next section, there's two more sections, but they're almost identical, so it won't take too much time. And again, you've seen this before. From the past, you'll probably remember me calling this a checkbook register. It's just like a checkbook register, but probably much, much bigger than most of your checkbooks. But it's showing revenue coming in, revenue going out for various things, and then in the far right column, what might be the balance at any given time. Also, unlike your checkbook register at home, we're going forward in time instead of backwards in time. So at home, you look back to see what you spent money on and how much you have right now. This is the opposite. It's showing what you have right now, or in this case as of October, and then what might you spend money going forward on. So in the far left column, besides the dates, so the third from the left column, at the very top of it, now you see that there's an A up there. That's to remind you in this worksheet, which this worksheet's intended to be more real, we hope, but it's not a guarantee, but we hope it's more reasonable. This is where you lose 5 students per year, but revenue grows by 2% from sales tax. So if you later tell me that those aren't the assumptions you want made, we'll change them and it'll just automatically populate in here. But that's where those numbers are coming from currently. And then you see a column for board PEPL revenues. We assume that you always levy the 33 cents. The voted PEPL, $1.34. If you go down that voted PEPL column, so the first number in that column is $362,786. If you follow that column down towards the bottom of the page, there's a very dark line under the spring of 2020. That's when your voted PEPL currently ends. You can come back and ask the community to renew that anytime between now and 2020, anytime on the 4 eligible election dates, that is. And this particular worksheet assumes that that has happened, or that it does happen. That sometime over the next 5 years, you have an election that is successful and the electors give you the voted PEPL for another 10-year period. So this worksheet assumes that. The next set does not assume it, and that's the only difference between these two sets of worksheets. So that's all revenue coming in, and then you see a column that's titled or headed Funds Used to Pay the 2013 Silo Bonds. Silo, Save, we have thousands of names for it. It's all just the sales tax. Then there's a column that says Funds Used to Pay the 2015 Silo Bonds. That's the assumption of the bonds that we just looked at. This assumes you've actually issued those. And a column that says Funds to Use to Pay the 2015 PEPL Notes. Again, that's what we just looked at. We assume you're issuing those. And then there's a column Funds Used for ongoing annual and maintenance. And that number, you can see, has a $750,000 figure in it. So we're putting that number in there as sort of a reservation, and then we've inflated it each and every year in the future by 3%. So that could be school buses, technology, maintenance, little projects that you do on the along the way. It's whatever it is. It's just money you're spending on infrastructure. This is not teacher salaries. This is not compensation for anyone. It's not papers and pencils and pens or textbooks. This is just infrastructure. We're only talking about the sales tax and PEPL funds. Then there's a column that's assumed that you're still spending about $1.1 million sometime this summer, not necessarily all at once. This just shows it being spent all at once, but it would be spent over the summer. And you can see in that box where the arrow is coming from the athletic complex, the FFA building, transportation center, student laptops, and the remaining 2014 projects. So those are things that the board has already approved, but you just haven't yet spent the money for. So we're reserving that money as well. And then you see in that other shaded box a large number, negative $2.375 million. That's the cash contribution that you saw on the prior page. Again, it won't come out all at once. It will come out month by month in smaller amounts as the project is dwindling down. You're going to spend the sales tax bond money and the PEPL note money first. You need to get that out of your hands, and then you'll spend your own cash at the end. So this is just hypothetically showing it all going out in the summer of 2016. More likely, it's probably going to be a little bit later, maybe in between July and December of that year as you get the last invoices from the construction project. But then in the far right column, like your checkbook register, it's just showing you at any given point in time in the next 15 years Where might be your balance? And in the very top right of that first page, before you go to future pages, there's a box that says estimated future minimum balance. And in that box, it's $1,193,000. So this is just an Excel spreadsheet. You all know that. You've seen it before. So it's just looking, the program is looking in that balance column to find the lowest point in time. And hypothetically, at least, if all of these things were 100% accurate, which they're not going to be because we're making estimates about enrollment and revenue and PEPAL and all those things, but they're reasonable estimates, we believe, and hopefully, obviously, that's what we hope you believe. It does not appear that your cash balance in PEPAL and sales tax, if the PEPAL is extended, would drop below about 1.1 million. And you can go page by page beyond that, or month by month, year by year, and by the time the sales tax ends in 2030, sometime over that 15-year period here, you would also have been able to spend about $8.5 million to $9 million more. That's more than the $750,000 annually that you're spending, more than the repayment of the 2 sales tax bonds and the PEPAL note. That's just more stuff. More computers, more maintenance, more buses, more projects. Or you could obviously be contributing some of that to a phase 2 or the next project if that's really going to happen. You could be accumulating it to reduce the amount that you might need to borrow for any such project. And then the last 2 pages are the exact same thing, but in these pages, just look in that top right corner, it's all you really have to look at because that's scary enough. You see the negative number, negative 1.498 million. So this section, remember, assumes that the voted PEPAL is not extended. That's whether you, the board, or some future board decides not to ever ask for the extension, or you put it for a vote and the community denies it. Now, obviously you have a lot of time, or relatively a lot of time, 5 years to get that vote passed. You could have an election 4 times a year to get it passed if you needed to. I'm not suggesting you want to go through that, but that you could do that. But this does assume that it is never implemented again. And obviously you cannot have a negative $1.4 million balance. And if you go to the second page, you see it's not just one time, it's a consistent negative balance, not always negative 1 million, but it's a consistent negative balance basically through the end of the 2030 period when the sales tax ends. Now, your balance actually recuperates theoretically to a positive number, but only $134,000 positive, and only in the last 3 months of that period of time. So this is showing us that if you think that you're not going to get the voted PEPAL for any reason, you shouldn't be funding a project of this size, because obviously it's the bond payments, the PEPAL note payments, the sales tax bond payments that are deteriorating your cash balance. But if you believe that the PEPAL extension is reasonable, and most school boards would believe that, typically, because once a school has it, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get it, but it is very common to just continue to renew it because it's just a continued tax. It's not a tax increase, it's just the same tax.
How many school districts don't have it?
Well, the PEPAL, not everybody has $1.34. You have the $1.34, which is the maximum. Overall, there are probably out of 340 almost schools, I don't know the exact number, but I would guess that there's maybe 60 that don't have any voted PEPAL at all. So some of those other schools have 50 cents or 67 cents or $1.34. They have some form of it, but it's extremely common. Almost everyone has it, and if they don't have it, they probably will have it sometime in the near future, because it's a needed levy for districts, especially with older, deteriorating facilities. So does that make sense? Any questions about what any of the worksheets are showing, or questions about what we made assumptions about, the bond payments themselves?
I think the assumptions are good. I think they're conservative.
Yeah, the assumptions that we're making here, for the most part, have not really changed for the last 4 years. Obviously, interest rates have changed and enrollment has changed, et cetera. But the assumption that we're using conservative rates, whether it be above 3 years ago's rates or today's, we've always been assuming some higher interest rates. We've always been assuming continued decline in enrollment to be conservative, to make sure that the revenues were there from sales tax. And that $750,000 number, that number has changed, but it's been relatively close to that number for the last 4 years or so. It has changed up and down, but close to that number. Terry, did you want me just to go through this checklist?
Yeah, I think maybe it wouldn't be would be good to go through the decisions you're gonna be needing to make coming up in the near future, so.
So I'm looking at the middle school construction financing. I assume that Terry put that in your packet as well.
It's our first page.
There are 7 bullet points there. Number 1, that's the things basically that we just talked about. Although 1D, discuss increasing or decreasing the budget amount. You can increase it from 18, obviously you can decrease it. That's easy to do. Increasing it from 18.7 million, you can do, but then you're gonna have to adjust that $750,000 assumption of what you might want to reserve for future needs. You will have a significant amount of cash just sitting around for the upcoming several years. But that doesn't mean that it's cash that's just sitting there, not needing to be used sometime. So you can increase the budget, but it has to come at a cost, just like anybody's budget is going to do that. Number 2, I mentioned that, there's no tax increase using the sales tax and Pebble bonds to finance the project. So that's no new tax that has to be voted on. It's all authority that the school board already has. You may be adjusting income surtax, et cetera, but that's all within your authority. Number 3, the cash flow projections. Again, we just looked at that, especially D and E. Those are the pages that assumed you have the PEPL and those that assume you didn't have the PEPL. Number 4, when to sell the bonds for the 2015 issuances, before or after July 1. As I mentioned, if you sell it before July 1, you don't need the money that soon, but that's not necessarily the wrong choice. Selling it before that date, the primary reason to sell it before that date is you're locking in interest rates. They can't rise once you've sold the bond. I mean, they will rise, but they're not going to rise on you. They're locked in once you sell the bonds and the notes. And if you wanted to, for the sales tax, we could use that higher enrollment. I personally don't think you should, because I think it's setting you up for, something. I'm not saying a bad thing's going to happen, but you just don't know. I personally am quite conservative. I like you to be conservative as well. And of course, after the 2015 date, you're not paying interest when you don't need the money because you haven't issued the debt yet, so it's reducing the amount of interest, but you're also taking risk that interest rates could rise. And after July 1, of course, we have to use the new enrollment figure. When to extend the PEPL? So this is a very good question, and I don't necessarily think you're going to make this decision tonight or in the coming weeks, but it is something that you must be discussing. As I said, you can vote at any time. There are 4 elections each year that are eligible for you to use. They change in even to odd years, but they're primarily 2 in the spring, 2 in the summer, winter. You can vote any of those dates, and you can vote any time now. Just because the PEPL doesn't expire for another 5 years doesn't mean you have to wait until it's imminently expiring. That used to be the norm. Schools always waited until a year before, or even 6 months before, and had that election. But it's become more normal to vote significantly in advance, meaning 2 years to 5 years or so in advance, because it allows you to plan with certainty. Right now, either of those 2 last cash flows could be the way it is, because you don't know right now that you for sure have that. So you could have that election sometime in the near future. That could be this fall, it could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now. But the sooner you have the election, A, if it's successful, the sooner you can sleep and know that you have that revenue. Or B, if it does fail, the sooner you know that, and the sooner you can bring that back, communicate better to the community if that's what the problem was, and try to make sure that that election gets passed. So that could be any time. The types of bond sales, 6A and 6B, the traditional method and the direct placement. The direct placement, well, I should say A, that the traditional method, that's what was used 2 years ago when you sold the sales tax bonds. It was very common. It still is the most common way, but that involves a public sale of those bonds. So we prepare lots and lots of paper and an enormous amount of disclosure information, and then we set a date and time, and we ask entities to bid. So those entities are generally large banks, could be a local bank, but usually in the public sale, it's usually large banks, so great big banks in the Midwest, in Kansas City, Minneapolis, Chicago, Denver, and or brokerage firms. So not Piper Jaffray, the company I work for. We cannot bid because we're your financial advisor, so we're prohibited, but any other brokerage firm in the country or in the world technically could bid. Realistically, when we've had those public sales, including when you sold your bonds, you probably will get 2 to 3 bids. That's pretty normal. If you were selling voted general obligation bonds, which you can't, you don't have that authority, but if you did, you'd expect probably somewhere between 8 and 15 bids. because they're backed by property taxes, and more banks and brokerage firms and investors are attracted to the safety of that investment. So the traditional method also almost always, although not always, includes setting aside the reserve fund, which you did before. The fees from the underwriter are there, and those are significant. Those are generally anywhere from about $13 to $18 to $19 per $1,000 that you're borrowing. With the direct placement, that fee isn't there at all. You generally are going to get the bonds rated by someone like Standard & Poor's or Moody's. There's a fee for that. And for the size of borrowing that you're looking at, it's roughly $15,000 in that range. With the direct placement, you're literally going to banks that you choose, not that I choose. I cannot solicit them. That's a rule change that was made last July 1 with the securities rules. But your staff, i.e. Terry, would be soliciting them, so she chooses who to send the bid packages to. We create all of that, but it can't actually go from my fingers to the bank's fingers. I send it to Terry, she sends it to the banks. And from that point on, then they can correspond with me if they need to, or they can correspond through Terry, whatever the case may be, but I can't directly solicit them. The reason being, I know many banks around the state and around the country, and if I just chose 2 of your 3, or 4 of your 5, or whatever it is, and I left somebody out, that could be perceived, rightly or wrongly, that I didn't want them to bid, or I had a grind to axe or something. So I can't choose who gets that package. And it could go to 1 bank, it could go to 100 banks, whatever you direct Terry to do. And I know she's already had those discussions, although it's been a year now, I think, with banks to know that they did at least a year ago or so have an interest in doing that. So the real difference is that the direct placement method significantly lowers the fees, which provides you more money to build a building with. The only caveat is that we need to make sure that when the banks bid, if that's the route you're going, which we have presumed you're going that way, that they're assigning market interest rates. Just because you go directly to the bank doesn't mean they have the right to say, oh, well then we'll charge 10%. Because we know 10% is not realistic. We know where it should be if you had a public sale, and somewhere reasonably in that range is what the bank should be bidding, because that's what everyone else around the country would be bidding. So as long as we know that that's the bid that you're receiving, then it's a good deal for you. Now, could the bank have a little bit higher fee? Yes, or higher rates, because the fees and the interest rates are going up and down. To you, it doesn't matter. It's all money that you just don't have. Whether it's a fee or whether it's interest, it doesn't matter. So there's those 2 methods. The direct placement also can happen quite quickly. We already, more than a year ago now, have created all the documents, and they're very simple documents, so we just have to update them. It would literally take me not very much time, and Terry could have them out tomorrow if that's what we needed to do. If you're really thinking of more this fall, then there's lots of time. You wouldn't send them out to the banks until probably mid-September-ish, so that we could get bids by the first part of October. You'd take action middle of October, and then the bonds would close around November 1. But again, we can move that back and forth sooner or later to what your needs are. And then the board decisions, those are for you to make decisions about. So questions about those items number 1 through 6?
Any questions or comments by board members?
No.
This is not an action item this evening, so we will not be taking action.
Thank you, Matt, for walking us through it so well, and you always make it such a complex set of pages, easy for us to understand.
Good. Well, if you do have questions, as always, you can reach out to me directly. More preferably, you would reach out to Terry, and she will let me know. Just know, of course, anything you ask me, if you do send me direct communication, it always gets copied back to the superintendent and business manager, so there's never private conversation between us. Not that there is any problem with that, but that's just how we operate, just so that everything's transparent. If you have other questions, let Terry know and she'll ask me. Terry, do you want me to stay around? Is there any part of your agenda that you think I might be here for questions? Or?
You got any thoughts on what you think interest rates might be doing?
Well, I think there's no question that they're going to go up, but just the question is when and how much. There are reasons why they may not. I mean, you probably read and seen recently what's happening in some of the European countries, what's happening in China. Those things right now our interest rates are staying low. They're staying there. But the Federal Reserve did finally make a comment, I don't remember exactly, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that they were ready to begin raising rates. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen today. But for the last 5 years, they've not said that. They've said we're holding rates where they are or taking them even lower. So they have now made that statement. They could, of course, change their mind, and they aren't the rule. They aren't the boss. Although they have a lot of control, the economy itself controls some of that, and things that happen in the economy just naturally by what we do can have an impact on that for better or worse as well. But I don't think there's any question that interest rates a year from now will be higher. Maybe not a lot higher, maybe significantly higher. And I know that sounds like I don't know, but I don't know. I mean, neither do you. We don't know. We don't have that crystal ball.
Well, the longer we wait to borrow it, the longer we got to pay. I mean, it's for a certain number of years, so it makes the final payment further away too.
Well, no, the final payment for both of these funding streams are fixed because your PEPAL only goes through that set date. So you can't have a bond payment that goes beyond that, and the sales tax sunsets on December 31 of 2029. So the longer you wait to borrow, the shorter and shorter the borrowing is. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the less and less you can borrow. In reality, actually, over the last 2 years, as schools have waited to borrow for one reason or another, not always, but oftentimes they've actually been able to borrow more because their enrollment actually went up while we waited, or the revenue statewide went up, or for PEPAL type borrowings, their property values went up, and meanwhile, the interest rates went down. So all good things, and this includes you too, with the exception that you've now paid, almost 2 years of interest on the 10 million and you haven't built anything yet. Other than that, which that's a significant issue, other than that, through almost dumb luck, and I don't mean that derogatory, that's just me, you, everyone that's involved in all these types of transactions, we just don't know, things have worked to your advantage from the financing point. Now, from the construction point, I'm not the architect and I don't know what you've been hearing, but I've been hearing all around the state, and I'm traveling all the time around the state, that those construction costs are going up very rapidly, where we normally might see them go up 3 to 4% annually inflation, it's closer to 7 to 8% right now. So from that aspect, the longer you wait, probably the more costly the project gets. Any project, not just at Charles City, but anywhere around the country.
But we can't wait till we sell another Pebble extension to borrow funds. I mean, just if we have, right now.
Well,
our
technically
Pebble
you could, because you could have an election this June or this September. Those are the next two. There's an election date in April, but you're not going to get an election then. You could vote in June or September and add another 10 years onto the PEPAL, and if that were to be successful, then you could actually go out and borrow against it. So currently you're borrowing against, 5 years? You could then borrow against 15 years of that revenue. But that's also dedicating that 10 years of revenue to the debt repayment instead of what these worksheets show as just free cash for other needs.
Okay, that's what I.
But you could do that, and that it does happen.
And we won't know on those construction costs for sure until we let bids.
Right.
However, the architects have been increasing our cost per square foot as we've moved forward on this project. So I think they've pretty much taken that already into account with this, our total.
Oftentimes the second borrowing, because you have two remaining pieces, the second borrowing oftentimes is delayed until you've taken those bids.
Yeah.
But in your case, you have a very significant cash contribution, that roughly $2.5 million figure. I hope your project's not $2.5 million over budget, but there's a lot of cushion there so that if your project is under budget, it's not as though you over borrowed because you just won't use as much of the $2.5 million in cash. Now, if your project is over budget, that means instead of $2.5 million, you're going to need $2.8 million or $3 million or $3.5 million. But by then, you'd know, and you as the board will have to make decisions as to what to cut or how to reduce the cost to keep it within your budget scope.
Doug, did you have a question or comment?
A quick question for Matt. With regard to other school districts, we have 340, say, in Iowa.
Yep.
How many will be encumbering their sales tax and Pebble as far as we are? Just a rough idea.
Almost everyone.
This high?
Yes. And that's a little bit of an exaggeration. There are some schools that haven't borrowed anything for decades. I mean, you can argue whether that's a good position to be in. It sounds like, we all want to be debt-free, right? But usually if a school district or a city doesn't have debt, it usually means they're not providing you much service. And that's a generalization, but a school doesn't, or a city, they don't have cash just sitting around that they can just go out and build a 10 or 20 or 50 or $100 million building with. they have to borrow. That's really the only mechanism they have.
So 3/4 of the school district would be borrowing at this level?
Yeah, I would say 3/4, yep. And then of the other quarter, there are districts that are borrowing, but maybe lesser amounts just for smaller projects. It's very, very common, really.
Thank you. Anything else from the board?
Matt, have you looked at I know the ISAB has as a legislative priority,
Yes,
the elimination of the sunset.
yes.
Have you looked at that wording? How does that, do we get grandfathered in, or is that gonna pertain to a new vote once that's passed?
No, I have not looked at the exact wording that they did in November. But in general, the way we think it would happen, although there's many ways that it could happen, we believe that if it were to happen, first of all, your revenue purpose statement that you had, that election that you had a couple years ago, and now most every school has had it, but there still are a few that haven't, that language was quite generic. So it didn't say, can the school board have the authority to spend the sales tax until December 31, 2029? It said until the tax ends. So currently, that is December of 2029, but if the legislature changes the law and adds 5 years or 10 years or 3,000 years, then you have the authority to spend it or borrow against it. So that's one thing. The other thing is the actual structure of it. Again, we don't know that this would be how it would be structured, but we believe it's likely that it will be made, if a change is made at all, be made into a 20-year rolling tax, just like your voted bond authority. So that any legislature in the future could stop it anytime they wanted, but it wouldn't hinder those schools that had just went out and borrowed because they had the 20-year borrowing capacity. So it's each year you have another year in the future, so you're constantly having a rolling 20 years. So that's possibly / probably how it would be structured. So you wouldn't be grandfathered in, it would just be, it's already statewide, so it would just be a new interpretation of the tax. Now, there's of course questions about if it's renewed or changed, is it gonna start be siphoned off? And your guess is as good as mine as to if that will happen for all kinds of different needs. Whether it be school needs within your school or whether it be state needs like roads or something else, who knows?
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Thank you, Matt.
Okay,
as
thank
always.
you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Move on to agenda item 5, the public forum for cost-saving measures. First, we'll hear from Dr. Cox.
Thank you. Our certified enrollment, just as a reminder, decreased 47.15 students from October of 2013 to October of 2014. And that reduction in enrollment has led to a decrease in state aid of just over $300,000. That's why we're in the position of having to make some cuts here at the board table. These cuts do not affect Charles City alone. Just open up any newspaper, you'll see other school districts dealing with this as well. Howard Winnersheep, New Hampton, Waverly Shell Rock, there's a whole host of them. So this is something that we knew was coming. We had a really large class that graduated in 2014, a smaller amount that enrolled in kindergarten students. And so the early retirement that we put in place last year was to help cushion this anticipated loss of enrollment. And our projections are that we will increase 90 students by the year 2020. But for the coming school year, we have to find a way to cut $330,000. So tonight is the opportunity for public to comment on the proposed cuts. We would ask that you come to the microphone, state your name, and then keep your comments to 2 minutes, please, so that we can get as many of the people who've come tonight that would like to speak the opportunity to speak.
Jason had asked me to make sure that everyone present that speaks is aware that he's not here because of having to be at a meeting in Des Moines, but he will be watching. He'll get to see this on the video, and we'll get a chance to see each and every one of your comments.
Would also ask that if, for instance, the first person speaks about saving the swimming pool, perhaps anyone else who wants to speak about the pool, wait until other items that are on the potential cut list have had an opportunity to have their say, so that everyone who is in attendance tonight would have an opportunity to speak to the different items that are up for proposal for cuts. If we end up at the hour limitation that we have set, and there are still people who haven't spoken, it would be up to the board's discretion to extend that hour so that you would also have an opportunity to speak an agenda item or a proposed cut if you did not have that opportunity during the hour. So with that, we will open it up to comments on the various proposed budget reduction options.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Marty. I'm an 8th grader here at the Charles City Middle School. I feel that it is important to keep the swimming pool for many reasons. Here's just a couple. There are many sports where you are part of a team and are guaranteed to be able to participate in every game. Most kids have to sit on the bench and never see floor time. This is a proven fact at Charles City. In swim team, everyone gets to participate in every meet. And when young people get to participate, they have better self-esteem and tend to do better in their school and work life. We have a community that is promoting a whitewater course, and look at how many of the young people in the community are using the river. Our community has families that cannot afford to pay for swimming lessons. The only swimming they get is during gym class. Now here's some suggestions. Sharing administration positions with other school districts to save enough money in the general fund to keep the pool. Changing admission at home swim meets. Changing or cutting a little of each athletic budget to fund the pool. Partnering with the YMCA to share faculties in the new single campus and splitting the cost. This would, of course, mean adding on to the gym and ensure enough space for both parties involved. Either use this to add a pool and for both the YMCA and school, or continue using the current pool after the middle school is vacated. I wish the school board would involve the community and student body more prior to making decisions and affect so many people. We are here to help. I know there are many people in the community that are willing to help find information and solutions that can benefit a larger group of people. My only hope is that you will consider my suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Lundberg. When I was informed that the extended contract of the agriculture education program was on the list of proposed cuts, I was told the average program has a 40-day extended contract. I've not been able to find any data to prove or disprove this. I do know of schools in Iowa that have 40 days or fewer. I also know of schools that have at least 50 and some as many as 80 days. On the list of proposed cuts, it states fewer days for supervised ag experience visits. To clarify for those who aren't sure what SAE programs are, it's project-based learning, and we have been doing it in agriculture education for 95 years. I need to clarify that the Charles City FFA advisor is not a paid position, as it is in some school districts. It was explained to me 32 years ago. I have a teaching contract for teaching, and an extended contract for FFA, SAE, fairs, contests, conventions, and anything else that falls under this title. So in less than 2 minutes, what is the real impact and implications if 10 days were eliminated? In the past 32 years, thousands of students have participated in FFA events and completed SAE programs. Many days are spent doing community service projects. No program in the state can match the success of this program over the past 30 years. This happens outside of the school day on evenings, weekends, holidays, and during the summer. SAE visits just don't happen in the summer, they happen 12 months out of the year. Extended contracts have always been in ag ed programs because, as we all know, corn grows in the summer. The proposed cut of $3,636 for extended contract time is less than 1% of the total proposed cuts the district is seeking. However, it would be a 20% reduction in the SAE and FFA program. Its impacts and implications to the agriculture education program will be significant, to say the least. I would like to close tonight by returning to the original statement that the average program has a 40-day extended contract. I don't believe that Charles City has an average program. I believe we have a program in Charles City that excels at teaching career skills 12 months of the year. We excel at preparing students for careers in agriculture, horticulture, and natural resources. We excel at preparing our students, many who remain in our district, to be community-minded citizens who will provide our next generation of leaders. Our students, school, and community deserve more than average. I encourage the board to not reduce the extended contract of the agriculture program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Renee Boss. I am a proud graduate of Charles City Schools and am the current 5th through 8th grade band instructor. It is extremely unfortunate we are faced with budget cuts. I do not envy being in any of your positions, but I wish to make clear that you understand the impact a 1-week reduction of summer music lessons would have on our program. The Charles City Band and Orchestra relies on summer lessons to continue the training and instruction for students on their specific instruments. During summer lessons, each student receives a weekly 15 to 30 individual lesson with an instructor who specializes on their specific instrument. Most students receive more individualized instruction on their and one-on-one opportunities with their teacher during the summer months than during the school year. Because of this, we see tremendous growth over these 4 weeks. During the summer lessons, the incoming 5th graders also begin their instruments. I would hate to not have the opportunity to have these daily or every other day lessons because of a shortened summer contract. I have great concern that 3 weeks for beginning instruction would not be adequate to get the student started off on the right foot with their instrument. A summer lesson program may be seen as an extra to some people. I assure you, this program is vital to the successes of our young musicians and to the Charles City Instrumental Music Program. A reduction in this program will indeed have a negative impact on the performance level and music education of all of our students. Currently, the summer program is funded from both the school district as well as the fee paid by each student participating. One possible solution could be a slight increase of the fee each family pays for lessons. I would be more than happy to discuss this with you if you have any additional questions on funding. Thank you to each of you for all you do on behalf of the Charles City School District. I hope for the future of all Comets you choose to maintain the current 4-week summer lesson program. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Burnham. Have been in the district 18-plus years. I always like to add the 6 years that I was a substitute in this district. 8 years I was a classroom teacher, 5th grade, and the last 10 years I have been your teacher librarian in the elementary, including this year, middle school. So I am the pre-K through 8 teacher librarian. I am here tonight to address the proposed reduction in the library staff and to advocate for the library program. The library is a crucial component to our teachers and students. I know that some people believe a strong library program sounds like a luxury. The truth is, a strong library program is not a luxury, but an essential component to every school's education program, especially when it is led by a certified teacher librarian and adequate staff. When a district has a teacher librarian with professional training for the 21st century, coupled with the adequate support of time to deliver an articulated library program, the results will prove in a strong library program that is not a luxury, but a necessity. While researching and gathering resources for your review, I located a letter from a former Iowa elementary administrator of 25 years. Her name is Christine Korolik. She is now a teacher librarian program coordinator for the Library School of Information and Science at the University of Iowa. In her letter to school administrators, she adds the following, which so eloquently states a lot of what I believe and you should be listening to, and the importance and need of strong library programs. She says, state mandates are focusing on students' reading proficiencies by 3rd grade. Inherent to this goal is the skill development that must be coupled with purposeful reading in order for students to want to read and to learn to comprehend and to evaluate what they read at all levels. Research also shows that schools with libraries frequently used by students demonstrate higher reading scores. Even our own Nancy here is currently working to finish a research project at UNI that shares the same statistics. In closing, I'm going to give you an envelope, and in this envelope are letters that the 5th grade students have written to you to encourage you to reconsider the reduction in the library program.
Thank you.
Are these all the same letters, or do we need to pass the envelopes around?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll get you a copy.
Okay.
I have one.
There's two down there.
There's two down there. And I'll get one to Jason. No, they're all different. The classrooms have been working on persuasive writing, and so they've taken this teachable moment to write a letter on what they believe. As you read them, you can kind of see that they probably brainstormed some ideas and put them on the board, and then decided to choose which ones they wanted to include in their letter. Some of them, as I read through them, may not have all the facts clear in their mind of exactly what this is including, but I just thought if you want to share them later so you can see, I basically did, there's 2 of them from, the letters are all from the Lincoln students, and every other one is from one classroom, the other 5th grade class is on the other side that follows. So you can almost tell, because of the layout of the letter, which ones came from one particular class or the other. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I suggest we pass them around. No, not for now. Hey, Scott, I'd like to make a suggestion that if we read these, we pass them around sometime in the future.
We can do that.
Hi, I'm Jill Connell. I'm here to support the maintenance of the swimming pool at the middle school. I'm not sure you're considering the impact the pool has on so many lives in this community. My kids have been swimming on the YMCA swim team for several years, and hundreds of kids participate in this outstanding program. Many of these kids don't participate in any other sport or don't have the ability to be successful in other sports. They earn ribbons, and on the day that they hand out these ribbons, even if it's a participant ribbon, it means so much to these kids. Another example of the importance of this pool is close to home for me. Sorry. My son Reagan has cerebral palsy. Sorry.
You're fine.
In the water is the only place he feels like a normal kid. He moves normally, and people don't see the differences when he's swimming. And he can actually participate on the YMCA swim team until he's 21. And this has been a godsend to him. He can't do other sports like other kids, but in the water, he's like everyone else. And I'm sure there are other kids on the swim team who have similar issues. But as Caitlin said, everybody gets to participate every week, so they all feel like they're contributing to the team. The varsity swimming and diving team is very important to many girls also. This is an established sport in our school, and I really think it's important to support the existing sports that we have that clearly have student interest. I'm in no way suggesting that we compromise our kids' education, but I do believe there are other ways to cut. I suggest that you talk to the many, many parents of swimmers in this town, and they can tell you the value of this pool. For some, it's as simple as teaching them a life skill like swimming lessons, all the way up to earning a varsity letter. I sincerely hope you'll consider all the reasons why this pool sets Charles City apart from being like every other rural town around here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Scott Jensen. I too am here to talk about the swimming pool. Just a few things I wanted to point out on top of the things the other folks have said. Again, swimming is that life skill. I would like the board to consider options of partnering maybe with other school districts to help offset these funds and make our pool more of a community or regional pool to allow that activity to continue for so many kids. Some sports may be losing a coach or cutbacks in programs. eliminating the pool would get rid of an entire sport for the girls' swim team. I would ask that you would look at that option. I went on all the school visits to other middle schools as you were talking about developing and building a new school, with the exception of Independence because of work conflict. None of those schools had a pool. What will set Charles City apart from other school districts? What will make people come here? We talk about the other activities, the other things. That makes us unique. I feel draining the pool, even for a short period of time, is going to cause problems with the seals around the pipes. Once it's drained, I don't think it'll come back. And I would seriously ask you to consider keeping the pool open, allowing all the kids and people in our community to use it. It's not just school kids. We rent it out for a lot of activities, and it is a skill that families do, and it brings families closer together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We set aside an entire hour. We're here to listen. Anyone else?
Then I might as well say something. I've been through budget cuts in my teaching career for many years, and I do know that the easiest way is to just pick a few positions, eliminate them, and there you have the money. But you can look at your line item budget. I used to ask to see it in New Hampton at least twice a year. We would look at it. We would look at the elementary science budget. We would look at the middle school science budget, whatever it was. And if you were to take each line item and cut it by 5 or 10% from every single line item that you've got in this budget, you would probably end up with $300,000. I know it can happen. And also, the issue of the social studies teachers, I have to go to bat for this, because now with all this testing, all the schools are worried about is math, science, and reading scores. And so what do they cut every time but the social studies, which is equally important and is part of the Iowa core curriculum. When I retired, they just thought they could eliminate my position because immediately it would save money in New Hampton. It did. I taught 6 classes, and they made 6 different teachers take each one of my classes. And you know what kind of social studies you had? It was using a textbook. And it went entirely away from the project-based education that I had. So guess what? 2 years later, they recreated my position. So you need to look at the entire budget and not just little things, because you can cut each one down.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? As we move forward, we're planning on making these decisions by April 15th?
Well, by April 30th at the latest.
April 30th at the latest.
But the board could take action next board meeting in February if they wanted to.
So it will be up to us as to when board members want these items to be considered and or voted on anytime between now and April 30th.
And as a reminder, we are hopeful that we will have some folks in the district that will take advantage of the early retirement package that is on the table, available until January 30th, and then it is gone. And that would help a whole lot to alleviate some of the stress on the budget. So we're looking forward to some folks.
Along with the wage increase negotiations.
Well, that's the other side of it.
That's right.
That's a big part of what's here too.
Yes.
I also think we need to, as a board, have a special workshop meeting that we can discuss these things one-on-one with you, Dr. Cox, and make some suggestions, and then give you time to go through them and see if those suggestions, how much they actually cut. I mean, like they said here a little, maybe we need to look at several things more than just 1 or 2 major things. And I think that'd be a good time for the whole board to sit down and workshop with you and discuss those things, then give you a few days to come back with an answer of what would cut on the budget.
in the first meeting in February, we're expected to have the architects here again.
Yes.
So that probably wouldn't be a good time based upon time limits, but maybe the second meeting in
I think it's
February.
gonna have to be a special workshop meeting.
Special workshop even?
I would suggest,
Okay,
whenever you can get it
Have
on the
a-
schedule.
have a
Being on a
conversation.
when do the negotiations finish?
We're just getting started. In fact, we have our first
Yeah, we
this
just,
weekend, and then we hadn't went into closed session yet.
Typically not until May or June,
It'll be a while.
Yeah, that'll be a while.
or even early July, so these decisions have to be made before that would be completed.
But I think we need to spend a little more time on them and then kind of look at what each board member suggested and go back into it and see what it cut, you know?
We'll take a look at the schedule for
Okay.
later in February and see what we can come up with for a special workshop.
Okay.
Dr. Cox?
Even if we have to do it on a Saturday afternoon or something.
Okay,
Scott, can I ask a quick question?
sure.
Will we be notified of when you're gonna be making a decision, not just in regards to the pool, but everybody before a decision is made, so that we can maybe do more research or anything?
Well, all board agendas are published. The question was, how will you know that we're going to make a decision, and would you be notified? And other than the fact that all agendas and meetings are published either on our website or given to the press in advance, potentially the board could come to an agreement sometime as to when the first round of voting may occur, so to speak, or when we would start voting on these cuts. If we could come to an agreement on that, you could have a 2-week notice. That would be an option for the board to consider, right?
And I think,
If we made a decision tonight that we wanted to vote on it or a partial vote or start voting in 2 weeks, then the public would have 2-week advance notice that votes would be taken. I mean,
also, that same night, we'd have an opportunity for public comment.
Oh, absolutely.
to make on what items we were gonna vote on that agenda item, that agenda night.
Any other comments or questions by the board or the public?
I just have one specific pool question.
I'm gonna have you.
Come on up.
Yeah, so the people who are watching on TV can get the question.
Jason can hear you.
Again, Scott Jensen, question on pool operations. I'm wondering, what is the amount that is anticipated saving, the dollar amount by closing the pool? And where was that number generated from?
It's just a shade under 60,000, and that number was generated from some research that Jerry Mitchell did with a couple of engineers. Jerry, I don't know if you want to come to the mic and talk about that, and if I get it right, then you won't need to. He's had a couple of different people analyze what it costs to run a pool, and so that $60,000 figure also factors in heating the space and any other utility needs that we would have in that area, but it is to drain the pool and to not have to have any more chemicals, any water, heating of the pool, any custodial work that goes into that. All of those factors were included. Jerry?
And maybe just a follow-up, and Jerry, if the engineers that looked at it, did they take into account that we have the thermal pool cover to save heating and costs like that? And one last follow-up then, will we be cutting janitor staff if we're cutting the workload to save money? Because again, some money does go into that. Didn't know if that was part of the equation. Thank you.
Some of the things that I did to do this, we have quite a few things that go into that. We have chemicals that we have to have for the pool. We have weekend checks that the custodial staff have to do all year round because of the pool. That goes into it. The heating, the pool water and the electricity that's used is really a cost number that's put together between a couple engineers and myself, and also communicating with a couple local places that also have pools that we talked to on what their costs were, and putting those numbers together, because we don't have separate, the only thing we have separate that we know is an absolute definite is water. It has its own meter. The electricity, the heating of the pool does not have its own meters because that's part of the middle school in general. So that's the numbers and the way we came up with it. We also, the question was on the pool cover. An engineer a few years ago did cost studies and energy savings for all 4 schools. And in that savings was a separate section just for the pool on covering that pool, what the cost savings would be, and all that. So we have that also, and that was considered in that also. So I guess that's where we're at with it. So.
Dr. Cox, and that 60,000 that, or so that you mentioned, does that also include the staff, the coach?
No, that's just the swimming pool.
So we're actually looking at a $66,000 potential savings.
Right.
And then that number also takes into consideration that we're still going to have that area. We still need to heat that area to a degree. We need to still provide electricity in there. So actually that number takes that cost figure back out of it. So our savings is with everything and still needing to keep that area heated and with electricity still there, so.
So basically then, Jerry, everything that you've put into a cost of operating is projected by somebody that knows about it. We don't have any previous records specifically to the pool, what it actually is, what it actually has cost us.
Absolutely, to the penny. No, no.
Okay.
Without having separate heating systems just for the pool or separate electrical service for the pool, no.
Okay.
It's all on cost figures, experiences from other pools, things like that. So that's how we came up with those numbers.
And we took the most conservative numbers.
Absolutely. There was a number that was extensively more than that, and we definitely took the lowest number so we could be as close as we could. So.
Thank you, Jerry.
I'm Jill Strike, and I'm a parent of a swimmer, and I'd just like to suggest that the board consider, I've done grant writing in the past. I know there are grants out there that we could write for to help subsidize the costs of the pools. If that's something if that's something the board would consider, I would be willing to look for those grants and help write those grants to offset some of those costs.
Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else?
I have a question that was brought up earlier by by the band, middle school or grade school band instructor, that they would be, maybe look into maybe having the parents pay for some of the early summertime lessons. Is there any thought to, I'd like to hear if somebody would, from the swimming or wherever, would want to come forward, maybe not tonight, but before we make a decision, on whether the parents would be willing to pay a little more of the operating expense for those that are involved in that. I mean, whether it be to pay more to get in to see the swim meets, or as far as the physical education part of it and everything, I'm sure that can't be a judge, but specifically the swim team, if their parents would be interested in throwing in a little more money into the pot, just specifically for that or not. And if you come up with something like that, let us know, would you please?
I think a difficult thing with the swim team is there's only 14 girls.
Yeah, that's right.
We have 14 girls and we have $66,000 worth of expense.
At a
That's
minimum.
Be a lot of car washes.
That's for swim team only, not middle school lessons or middle school swimming as part of the physical education program.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of kids in this community that get taught swimming in that pool that we should consider, not just the sport.
Yeah, that's what I was, okay.
Yeah, speaking about that swimming, the day that you were talking in the press about draining this pool, we're talking about the Nashua second graders, who, because of a generous person in Nashua, pays for them to have swimming lessons every year for all these second graders. Now, my kids went to Lincoln School, which didn't have a gym. but they got to have swimming every year for 9 weeks. And so there are people that cannot afford swimming lessons, and here the people from Nashville can come up to RY and have swimming lessons. Do our second graders all get swimming lessons? This should be part of it. It should not be just that swimming team.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there's not, we will end that agenda item. And I'm planning on taking a short recess, so those of you that wish to leave may do so, and those of us that wish to take a short break may also do so. We'll be back in 7 to 10 minutes. We'll call the school board meeting back to order. And if there are no objections from the board, I would like to skip down to agenda item 9 so that we can deal with that and allow our students to get home to finish their homework or get to bed. Since we've taken up their time this evening with other things. So we'll move on to agenda item 9. Dr. Cox?
Yes, we have a FFA building agreement, and we've got at least 3 students here from our Charles City FFA, as well as some other people that's part of that project. And so I'll invite Jim or Amy or whoever is here to speak. Craig?
I'm Craig Anderson. I'm here on behalf of the Floyd County Fair Society as well as the steering committee for the Youth Enrichment Center. We've had several drafts of that 2080 agreement that is in front of you now. Had attorneys going back and forth on it. I think we've reached a point where we feel good about what's in it. Hopefully you do as well. I'd probably just say if you've got questions, I'd be happy to field them. I think the biggest thing, the point that we're trying to make in this is that, you know, when you see the word enrichment is taking something good, adding something to it to make it better. And that's what we're trying to do with these funds and with this project, to give these youth a chance to see that when you're given something, you don't just have to stand pat on that. You can try and build on it. You can try and make it better. They've been involved along with Jim Lundberg every step of the way on this. They've been crucial in the design of it. I had a hand in that. They are going around in the community, making presentations to service groups, that type of thing. So they're getting a lot of educational opportunities just on the groundwork of this thing before we even have it in motion. So I think that's really encouraging. It's fun to see the excitement they have for it. They realize that, you know, some of these guys that are juniors maybe or seniors, they may not really get to see it that much as a student, but their legacy is going to live on in that thing if they have a hand in it, and I think that's very important. So if you guys have any questions, be happy to field them.
Any questions or comments by board members?
Can you start by telling us what the FFA's expectation for a building is and what they're going to what you're looking at using it for, and what you're developing it to use it, what activities you're going to have there, what you see happening?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with it is we've got this base of funds. The building is going to be determined by what we can raise. We're not going to overextend. We're not going to jeopardize their money in the thing, or the fair's position that we've set ourselves on. You know, ideally, I think what we envision would be a building that could be a year-round facility that could be used for farm safety day camps, any educational opportunities that the FFA has, contests, district contests, that type of thing. Beyond that, you know, we would like to see it possibly be a community center if it gets to that size where it can accommodate those type of activities. One thing that we've really started looking into would be something that the FFA kids could help with, would be an indoor farmers market maybe in the wintertime. So you could have more people coming to town for that, give them a hand in that. You know, beyond that, it's going to be educational first. It's going to be something that what all spawned this was Gil and Donna White, Gil's conversation with Jim, was that he felt that, you know, the livestock gets a lot of the attention at the fair. They've got an arena, they've got their housing, you know, their barns and everything for that. Gil's thing was that he felt that the horticulture, that the mechanical, that the fabrication deserved just as much of the spotlight on them as what the livestock did. So, you know, his conversation with Jim was that he'd like to see a building out there dedicated for that. So that's gonna be the primary focus for that. For the fair time, that's gonna be where all those can be housed under one roof. But beyond that, you know, we would hope maybe it could be a community center. We'd like to put it with basically a catering grade kitchen, you know, that you can have it big enough where if there's any school activities that can be done there, or otherwise, you know, whether it be receptions, family reunions, community events, business expos.
Just as long as something like that doesn't hinder what the FFA wants to set up. Because I can understand it wouldn't be any different than going on the livestock barns. They permanently have the pen set up sitting there. And being on, not the livestock participant in 4-H, and being on what you're talking about, I knew there were some advantages of having permanent setups also in those 4-H buildings for those things, just as long as we don't get so concentrated on the making it a banquet hall aspect that we take away from the possibility that maybe the engine club does want to put up a permanent steam engine that runs in this building, that runs every year, or that there's looms put up that are permanently set up in this area too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're...
Robin, your mic is off.
Yeah, we're not dealing in absolutes on this at all right now. I think that's a very important point to make. We've got ideas, we're still gathering ideas and working towards it. So I think that's the biggest thing. This is an essential step in us continuing with it. But as far as, is it absolutely gonna be this or absolutely gonna be that, we don't look at it that way right now. So I think keeping it wide open enough that we can accommodate whatever the desires end up being.
Well, and I think for all of us, you know, we're here with the students in mind, and our focus is on students and education. And earlier today, I had a conversation with Jim Lundberg about the students and how were they involved. And what I understand is that the students, that you've all been involved in the design and establishing just what this program and this building should be used for. Jim, you shared that even one of the students had even designed, you know, a lot of what we're seeing with the design for this building, and that's important to all of us, that that the students come first, and it's great to have something that's a multi-use building, and to have a revenue source there for the Fair Board, but we appreciate the students being involved, as well as the schools being able to have first right on the use for the calendar too.
Yeah. And I bringing it back to keeping the focus on the students, I think that's one thing we as a Fair Board really pride ourselves on. Everything we do out there is geared towards making better opportunities for the youth, both the FFA and the 4-H participants. And I think the other thing that you have to feel really good about, and that we definitely do too, is you got Jim, that's been in this from the very beginning. You know, he's got a very long track record of making sure that we've got an outstanding FFA chapter, and I don't think our goals are going to be geared that way, and he's going to make sure that we stay with the focus on the kids. So I don't have concerns that this is going to get away from what it's supposed to be. I really don't.
Great, thank you.
I'd just like to comment, we would be happy, they would be happy to make a presentation to you. They have one put together. They've done it 3 times now. I know tonight wasn't the appropriate time to do it, but you guys have some time in your schedule in the next couple months. They'd be happy to make a presentation on how they're involved, what they're doing. All you have to do is let me know. So.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
One concern I have is I hear you mention Gil Whiteley. Am I wrong that it's not only Gil, but it's Donna involved too?
That's correct.
Well, nobody ever mentions Donna. And I mean, that's just a question I had. I just wanted to make sure that I understood it right.
No, I mean, our relationship with both Gil and Donna in the FFA goes way back. And,
yeah.
And I think Craig was just referring to a conversation, but there's no question Donna is a huge part of this project, always has been, was with the greenhouse, and Trust me, that's taken care of.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll see that if you see the
Yeah,
presentation.
I was referencing a specific conversation.
Yeah.
well, I know that the Charles City FFA has got a outstanding, and Jim too, has got an outstanding track record behind them, and you did fantastic things with the students that you had in your classrooms and stuff. And I think that we need something for the FFA. I'm just concerned about getting fairgrounds involved in with the FFA project.
And can I address that?
Absolutely.
And you know, there's no question when this came up, you're talking about two separate entities when you have the school district that has the money for a building being built on property that belongs to someone else. But I think that's what this agreement has clarified, and we've had the attorneys involved, and we've met with administration and the fair board. And I, as you said, I know the fair board, like the school board, has the best interests of the students at hand when this comes to that. And trust me, I'm looking out for these kids, so I'm gonna make sure that happens. So I feel pretty confident that happens. I think we have a really good agreement worked out. I've stayed out of it because of my pay grade, but I know the things talked about. I really pushed hard for the Charles City students have first right for the use of the building. We've worked out something like that. No charge to the Charles City School District for using this facility. You know, it's a gift to the FFA chapter. The FFA chapter wants to share it with the entire school district. So that's a really important part of this project. So, and someone asked, you know, I can think of a million ways this is going to be used. Not just for FFA, but maybe prom could be held there, the athletic banquet, teacher-in services, freshman retreat, school carnivals. I can think just of, it's an endless list of ways that this can be used for the students in our school district, so.
Excellent.
You know, like, it's just not a rarity either, but our class is having our 50th anniversary crash reunion this summer. If that building was built, are you telling us that we could use it for no charge?
No.
No,
Oh,
it would be
no.
for
No.
student focus.
It's a school, well, I guess it ain't a school activity.
No, it's
School
not.
activity.
And you probably wouldn't need a facility that big. but- I don't want to.
Yeah, we did.
So there's some ongoing fundraising that obviously needs to be done to meet your goal. And at what point do we pay the $274,000 then? Is that upfront? Is that in phases? Is that?
Could you come to the microphone so the television audience can hear?
Amy Stout. The way I understand it with Terry, the agreement is we submit the bills to you, you pay them up to the dollar amount, and then it becomes the Fair Board's responsibility. Is that correct?
Right.
So you turn no money over to us. All bills are submitted to you.
Okay, okay.
And that's
But
because
do
of
we
the
turn
state-
money over to you?
Hold on.
Terry's talking.
Go ahead.
Make sure you use your mic,
I'm sorry.
Terry.
That's because of a state law that we can't pay them directly. The money is for building this building, and so that's why we're gonna pay the vendor directly, or the contractor.
Okay.
And those bills could be received at any point in time from the beginning of construction until the very end,
Right.
based upon when they decide they'd like to have access to this share of the funds.
Right.
Correct?
Mhm.
Do you have a tentative plan in mind in regards to that? Are you going to look to use this money first and fundraise? Are you going to look to fundraise and then finish?
The biggest advantage we see with having these funds, even if they're not in our possession, the biggest advantage we see is in grant writing. One of the first things that's on the grant application is what do you have, what funds do you have dedicated towards this? So we view it as giving us a big advantage in being able to get grants because we do have funds.
Sure.
So logistically, you know, I would guess if this is accruing interest and we've got other cash that's come to us in the way of donations, I don't know that we would look to take it right away. You know, I think we've got to make a business decision there. So as far as have we laid it out exact, you know, we've got the building laid out as far as our construction plans in phases. You know, but if we don't intend to borrow, you know, so I mean, if we get to the point where we've exhausted other funds and we're needing this, we would, I'm sure, be asking for it at that time for sure.
Okay, so the question I've got is, you're kind of projecting now, what, $750,000 project? Roughly?
Yeah, roughly $750,000 to $1
Okay,
million. Correct.
so how much of that money are you gonna have to be raised before you start the project, or before you start going it down to a $500,000 project?
Well, we had it broken down into 3 phases, and we have Mark Moyne over here, he can answer. Brandon Childs put together some designs on the computer, and we had sent on to Mark, so he's been working with us as an architect for us. The phases we have started in Mark's recommendation, correct me if I'm wrong, half to 3/4 you want in hand before you start the project. And with phase 1, I believe our projected numbers were about $550,000 to complete stage 1.
That's including the 274 that we have?
Correct.
So you're gonna raise that much more before you start? Okay. Well, I just noticed by the looks of the building here, from what you showed, I really like the looks of the appearance of the building, and it don't look like that they've designed any extravaganzas into the looks of it, but yet it's nice looking.
This is what the kids had drawn up in their visions and started, and we've been rolling with it, so.
Any other questions or comments by board members?
I like the agreement too. I think the agreement does give as the school district, lots of wiggle room, lots of accessibility. It's very fair. So I approve of I do like the agreement.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
My name is Steve White. I'm Donna White's son. I helped originally set up the gift for the FFA with my mother and her husband. It was at that time specifically supposed to go to the FFA and for their use only. The fact that they're trying to enhance it, I'm fine with that. I only have 2 problems. Number 1, if they do build this community center, what's the impact on the rest of the community? Are you going to pull away all of the venues from the use at the Elks, the VFW, the Knights of Columbus? Are you going to have it so that we can no longer have anything going to the middle school to use it as a community center? And the other part of it is, with the Fair Board, or the Fair Society, being the owner of the building, I ask, how are you going to generate enough income to sustain this building? And the only way that they can do it is if they have an alcohol license. So you are giving the money to this Fair Society to build a building that's going to have to sell alcohol to sustain it. And my mother would not approve of that at all. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He brings
ready
up some good points.
Ready for a motion or further discussion? Further questions?
How do we address that you would have to sell? That would be an intent, correct? To have an alcohol license would then be an intent.
We do have an alcohol license, for our grandstand events and stuff.
Right, for the grandstand event.
So yes, it would be our intent that we'd be able to do that. I mean, like I said, if we're gonna present the opportunities to the youth, we do absolutely have to be able to fund it. And that's, is it preferred? Probably not, but it is a necessity for us to be able to do this, to pull it off. I guess my emphasis on that would be, we're not gonna have beer signs all over the place. That's gonna be a designated area that can be pulled down, that it can be locked off, that there'd be no access to anyone. It's gonna be for the type of events, the wedding dances, that type of thing. That's the only time you're gonna see that. There wouldn't be any of that commingling with the fair or any of the youth activities. So that's, I guess that would be how I would address that.
Question I have is, if, okay, this is called the FFA building, the FFA is part of the school system, and I don't think the school system, you know, if we're gonna be part of it through the FFA and whatever else, that we can be involved with the liquor license. I mean, we're not, the Floyd County Fairgrounds is gonna have, Fair Board's gonna have the liquor license, but can we furnish a building that they have, that they serve liquor, that our name's affiliated with?
We're not owning the property. It's,
It's in 2080.
if you, again, if you'll.
What she said is that
We're
that
on
has been
TV,
addressed in the
Amy.
20, that is, you've had your attorneys look at it, our attorneys looked at it, that is
Okay,
spelled
our
out in the
attorneys have
agreement.
looked at
Yeah.
Okay, I just,
Yeah, because the first I had seen of this document was Friday when we got it in our packet via email, and I don't think anyone else on the board had seen it prior to then either.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So we had nothing to do with this document as a board.
Mm-mm.
It was all handled through administration.
Okay.
Just for point of clarification.
well, I'd like to see, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to see us table it till next meeting to act on it. Not to act on it tonight.
Based on,
I'm just still concerned about the wishes of the White family, that they're not condoling the fact that, and I realize they're gonna have to have it probably to make the thing work, but it's not the wishes of the White family that they were putting their money into a building that was gonna be serving alcohol. That's my thoughts. Until I know more about that, I really can't vote yes for it either, you know.
so are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion that we table an action on it till February 9th meeting, or the February.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you have a question?
Dr. Cox, were you aware of the family's hesitation
No.
or possible concerns?
No.
Would that have influenced your recommendation tonight at all?
I can't say that it would have.
Okay.
They made a generous gift to the FFA program. The FFA program has worked with the Fair Society to come up with something that will enhance the community. You know, I would defer to them on that, but I was not aware that the concern about the White family opposition to alcohol at the place. And again, I think this is an opportunity for kids in the community to really benefit from a generous donation. Mr. Lundberg, you know?
I need to address this. 7 or 8 years ago, the Fair Board, which was up until that point alcohol-free, acquired a liquor license, and the Fair Society voted to sell beer at the fairgrounds. As the FFA advisor, I opposed that. At the time, along with the 4-H, that we opposed it, said we need a alcohol-free fair. I also understood from the time why the Fair Board was approaching that, to get up attendance at grandstand events. I will say, in the 8 years since we've had it, I see less alcohol on the fairgrounds now than I did before they served alcohol. This group of people, they ride pretty tough corral on that. Before, we had individuals that bring it into the livestock barns where the students were. They were drinking it. It just wasn't supervised. Now with their liquor license, there are certain places it has to be, and if it's and they don't want to put that at risk, and so they stop it. But they do very much control it. And I think if you'd ask the students, they don't see it at fair. I mean, they're not allowed to go to the places where it's at. Along with this building, I mean, I have very mixed emotions on this issue right here. From the standpoint that, no, would that be my option? No. I also understand to make a building like this go, that it has to generate revenue. And to be able to rent it out to organizations, to groups, to families that will pay rent to use this building, to meet the cash flow of it, they're gonna have to serve alcohol. As we've met with the architects, as we've talked about this, and this is not a new issue that we haven't talked about since day one on this. It's been made very clear that, for example, during fair, there will never be alcohol in this building. if there's a student event, there will never be alcohol served in this building. It will always be, locked up and hidden. And unfortunately, that's our society today. People have weddings, they have alcohol. Just turn on the TV, you can see it all the time. And there's no question for them to maintain this building, to make it available for our students to use all year long. They've got to generate some revenue off of it, and they're going to have to do that to generate revenue, if I like it or not. I just know that's going to be part of it. And so, again, I truly trust these people. I know that they have the best interests of the students involved, and they will also make sure that it doesn't happen, that it will not be an issue. But I do understand where you're coming from. I've had those same issues, but I just know it has to be part of it if we'll proceed as planned. So
I'll agree with you that, it's probably going to become necessary to make the thing function. My concern was, and not so much the week of the fair, my concern is going to be 6 months after the fair and somebody has a wedding out there and somebody goes out on the highway and, well, where was you? Oh, we were at the Charles City FFA building.
Right. Well, I think, or they might say they were at so-and-so's wedding, is what I really think they would say. Yeah, but I do understand.
That's all.
Right.
I just want to make sure we got ourselves covered on it.
I'm sure our FFA students would agree that I have violated Robert's Rules of Order for allowing conversation and questions before a second is made on this topic, correct?
Right.
Thank you. So without further ado, there is a motion on the table to table this for further review and conversation. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies. Is there another motion to be made this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the FFA building agreement as recommended.
I'll second that.
It's been moved forward to proceed with the agreement as presented. Any further discussion by the board?
Yeah, let me say, I agree with you, Jim, and I think I see Robin nodding her head. I think we're all concerned, and thank you, Jim, for speaking to us about that issue. I think the fact that we've got Jim in here looking after these students, we can trust Jim. I trust him, and know that, he's going to keep them, their safety and keep them first and foremost, rather than getting into any type of trouble with alcohol being present in that building. So, yeah, let's
Well, I
vote.
also feel that having Mr. Lundberg involved, we have people who we can trust that can be held accountable. If you read the agreement, the board still has a lot to say as to what goes on during this building and construction too. If we decide to make sure there is a lockdown type whatever in the front of wherever that bar is going to be, we can be responsible for that, and we can make that call. So I'll give you my motion in confidence in knowing that we'll make sure that we have a part in getting this right, and that we can do this so that this building does stay in good order. I think that's out of respect to your parents too, is that we don't build something that falls in disrepair in 10 years. And this is going to allow us to build something that will probably go on for decades then, because it'll have the funds to maintain it. I think that's real important.
Yeah, it'd be a nice legacy.
I have no doubts in my mind that Jim Lundberg will control it, but Jim Lundberg ain't gonna be there forever. And I can't see what the reason is for postponing it 2 weeks when we just had this presented to us. This is the first time this building's ever been mentioned to the board at all, 2 days ago. Excuse me. And I just think that we're kind of rushing through it real quick we have never discussed anything about this funds from the White family or what we're gonna do with it or anything till tonight.
And I guess that's where we know that Dr. Cox and Terry, Mr. Lundberg, the fair, have done their due diligence in looking at this. Their attorneys have looked at this. At some point, we have to trust the people who are bringing us the recommendations and know that they're presenting us with the best option.
Are there any comments by the public? One more.
brought it to the.
Come back up to the mic. Sorry.
I had a meeting with the FFA and the Fair Board 2 weeks ago today to bring this up and have it discussed. So it's not that it hasn't been discussed. I brought it up then.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Wienering,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Frisbee,
No.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1. We will now move back to agenda item 6, athletic complex. Dr. Cox.
Just
Not that I'm against it, I just, excuse me.
Just
Go
a
ahead,
brief
Doug.
update that next steps in the process are for SEH Yagi to do some survey work to verify the boundary of the property, verifying the location of the overhead power and underground sanitary sewer, and also verifying the elevations. Everything that's been used so far has been from the internet or city utility maps, which are general in location. And so it's really, are you ready for SEH Yagi to move on with the next phase? Or how would you like to proceed with athletic complex?
What would be the next stage that they'd pursue with?
When the problem is, this is only an information item, however, we could have some form of consensus.
Yeah, right.
To move forward. Would be no motion this evening. Whatever we do next with SEH Yagi will cost us more money.
Yeah.
How much,
Or the-
we're not sure.
Building and Grounds Committee could address this at their next meeting.
How are we
Do we
coming?
have a meeting planned?
We would schedule one for the 9th.
Okay.
How are we coming with the city? I mean, are they coming around at all? to
Yes.
Coming up with some suggestions on?
Well, then I think we probably should do the next step.
I'm feeling like these budget cuts that are before us, maybe we
Different
just.
fund.
It's a different fund, though. We
It
can't
comes
let.
from the same fund we're building an
yeah.
$18 million
We don't wanna
school out of.
Confuse people by saying
It
we're gonna hold
is.
back on this because of the
It
budget
is,
cuts.
but it isn't. It's an activity, it's a sport.
And we're not planning on, we don't have the finances to build a facility. We only have the finances to purchase the ground for one to be built upon at this point in time.
What would happen if we go ahead and buy the property and do nothing else to it, but rent it back to the FFA or somebody rent it out?
Well, we can't buy it until we get the zoning. That's one of the contingencies. And to get the zoning approved, we've got to know where some of these items are so that we can plot out everything in a planned unit development concept for the city, which is going to require exact drawings and details.
So that means
comes
we're
at a
gonna have to
cost.
spend the money in order for we can even buy it, according to that.
Right.
Your state.
Or if the seller would waive that part of the agreement,
And we'd wanna run the risk that they would pass it.
then we'd run the risk in the future that the city might not allow the rezoning. You want to defer it to Buildings and Grounds?
I guess.
We can have a meeting in 2 weeks
Okay.
and
I'll make a
talk to
motion
well, there's no motions
Just an
tonight,
information item.
just an
Just
information
defer it
item,
to-
but
okay.
We can do that.
Jason and I can meet with
All right.
SEH Yagi and different people and see what we can come up with that's satisfactory. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, smart lunch presentation. Mr. Johnson, you're up. Justin, are we done with this board?
Yes.
Could we move it or something so that Lorraine and Jim could see, unless they move?
I didn't know he was doing anything over there.
Thank you, sorry. Now, if you could only make your presentations at the middle school cafeteria that large, Dr. Cox, we'd be in great shape there.
All right, thanks for letting me have some time to share with you a little bit of background.
Do we need to get the mic to him?
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. Yeah, you got a long cord.
Okay. So again, thanks for letting me come out and talk to you about a program that we're looking into at the high school that I think is you're going to find pretty interesting and is going to offer a lot to our students. Have Justin put 5 minutes up on the clock and count down, but I don't think I'd be able to move that fast, so we won't even try it. But Smart Lunch is a program, so a little bit of background information. Came across this program here about a year and a half ago that a school in Cedar Rapids, Kennedy High School, has been operating as a MTSS or an RTI type of approach to reach their struggling learners and then to enrich their high-flying learners as well. I became interested in it by conversations with their PE teacher that I know well down there, and as I've came here and started to see some of the things that we've been doing with instruction and with MTSS, it seemed like a really good fit and something that we needed to look into. So we sent 8 teachers in October, late October, down to Kennedy for the day to talk to their principal, some of their students, and a lot of their staff members to see what it was all about. And when they came back genuinely excited about it, I did not go on the first trip with them. We decided to kind of work as a team to gather some more information and see what this thing was all about and if it was something that would work for us. Just last week, I took our secretary, Mrs. Vanderwerf, and then 2 other teachers and 10 students down to Kennedy for a second trip with a follow-up. We had their student leadership teams show us around and got to see it in action as well. And that was very well received by our students as well. So Smart Lunch is an acronym, starts for Students Maximizing Achievement with Resources and Time. And I'm going to move through this information rather quickly, so stop me if you have any questions. But what this really is a scheduled time during the day to meet the needs, instructional needs of students. And it's a kind of a combination of that idea with an open structure and open concept to our lunch. Okay? So that's kind of what we're looking at here, and then I'll kind of piece it together here as we go. Right now, we currently operate a 7-period schedule with a time in between second and third period called Comet Time. Comet Time is 26 minutes. It's prioritized each day by department. The roster is built every single day by our teachers prior to that time. Students report to a homeroom and then are told so-and-so, each teacher that has requested them, and they go to work with that teacher on individual things and get the help that they need. It's very structured. We keep it as orderly as possible, similar to their other passing times during the school day, and then we utilize Wednesday for clubs and meetings. So quickly here, without the students listed on the left-hand side there, you can see kind of what that roster looks like on an everyday basis. So on every given day of the week, we have a number of teachers that are prioritized. You can see Tuesday, since Monday's blocked, Math, Spanish, German, choir, and PE have priority that day. So those teachers will request their students every day, and we get to go. We send the students on their way. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how we operate currently. And then you can see the schedule on the right-hand side there. So the difference between the two, Smart Lunch is a 60-minute block of time between 4th and 5th period that is broken up into 2 30-minute sections. So it allows essentially 2 Comet Times back-to-back during that lunch period. It's prioritized each block, so each 30-minute block is prioritized by certain content areas, and I'll show you how that kind of maps out with our content areas. The roster is built by student need. In fact, the roster wouldn't necessarily be built every day. This would be much more on student choice and responsibility and moving to where they need assistance. For our very struggling students, we would have more of a detailed schedule for them to go to. Intervention is priority between both. Smart Lunch is much more open and much more responsibility and trust in the students, whereas Comet Time is very structured and orderly. Both of them offer time for clubs and meetings. Smart Lunch would offer that on a daily basis and would allow us to expand upon some of those offerings. Smart Lunch will offer teachers extra PLC and extra prep time during the week. If they're willing to take a working lunch one day a week, they would have an extra hour in their team times every week to work on some of the things that we're doing instructionally in the building. And then they would also have an extra prep for an hour plus their lunch, an hour including their lunch on a weekly basis as well. And I'll show you how that maps out. And then we take a little bit of time to talk about the mental break and the movement of kids at this time, with the research out there for adolescents to take some of those things. I put it down on the level because it's just more of one of those caveats to the whole thing. It's not a driving force behind it, but we did talk to Kennedy about that, and they saw a lot of good comments from the students about the day just going better when they have that hour break in the middle of their day for their studies, to move around a little bit, offer intramurals, open the gym and the weight room, and they can do a lot of different things. This isn't my computer, so I must be cursing your computer or something here. So that's the difference between the two. Here's how the schedule shakes out minute by minute. You can see Smart Lunch is broken up. I broke it up into A and B because of the tutorial aspect to it, but understand that's not two separate lunch shifts. It's a 60-minute period where the lunchroom is open for kids to go and eat when they're available during that hour. So we would naturally see a rush of students at the start of A lunch because everybody's going to want to eat. And Kennedy is trying to fix that a little bit, so that's one of the feedback they gave us to look at right away. And then when that tutorial ends in Smart Lunch A, we'd have another rush of students going to eat after their first set of tutorials, with the kids in between that are at clubs, intramurals, who just choose to eat at different times. But a 60-minute block of time that's open, free and open concept, and then 5th, 6th, and 7th period. Right now, our 4th period is broken up into 3 sections for lunch. We wouldn't have that issue as well with this particular schedule. And you can notice too, because of the minutes we have, the school day does not change. Essentially, we can combine what we offer in time for lunch right now with the current 26 minutes of comment time, and we still run the same day, 8:10 to 3:20. That's a big thing for us if we're going to try to transition into this and trial it this year at some point. I'm not going to read everything off of this because I've kind of already talked about a lot of them. On the left-hand side, the freedom, responsibility of students are going to the enrichments that they choose to. They're going to the club meetings and things that they choose to, but the priority is that they're going to the intervention areas where they need assistance. Some of our students who rarely, if ever, will need intervention during the school year will have extra time to study. A lot of our higher achieving students, and just speaking in general terms, will not have a study hall because of the way their schedule shakes out with a lot of their extra, their accelerated classes. It's only offered 1 period or 2 periods. Very predetermined schedule that they have. This would allow them to have some extra study time. Opportunities for teachers that I've already covered. And here's where we get into a little bit about the lunchtime. The choice, freedom, and responsibility for the students really is a little bit more of a concern with our staff and when we look into this during the lunchtime, because we're not telling 125 kids to eat 3 different times. We're telling close to 500 or whatever we're at, over 500 kids, that you got 60 minutes, find a time to eat. And if you're not here time A or time B, structure your time wisely. We still offer open campus for seniors. That's expanded now to 60 minutes rather than 25 in what they have. So we have those things to talk about as we look at this program. And we rely on the other schools doing this to really look at if that's successful. If you go to Cedar Rapids Kennedy and you watch this lunch period, I can attribute to it, it feels very similar to about a passing period in a high school for 60 minutes straight. Kids are moving. They're going where they need help. They're doing different things. The lunchroom was crazy at the start. I mean, the lunchroom at a school that houses 5 times more than us, and their lunchroom's not very much bigger than ours, and it was packed to the brim. But they are working through ways to remediate that problem. It's an open concept to lunch, but it is still controlled. We control where they can and cannot eat. We're not going to have a bunch of kids all the way down in the art room here eating lunch. We're not going to have kids eating lunch around the machineries in the shop in the ag area. Okay, so we would open up a couple of hallways. We would open up the career center / study hall area to eat. We do have teachers right now that have 5 to a dozen students that eat with them every day. So we would eat in classrooms. So we talked to Kennedy about how they keep that clean and how that goes. 0 problems since they've had that, because students take the responsibility because we're giving them something that benefits them, so they take that responsibility. And then we would keep it open, essentially be open for about 75 minutes. We would have some early kids that would go. This would allow some of maybe our special ed students or some of our visitors to go eat before that 60-minute starts, and then all the students would have to have said they were eating or not. They would have to go through the line with at least 15 minutes left in Smart Lunch. So I know I'm moving fast, but this, I'll plan to hopefully be back later to talk with some students with you when we can try to pilot this thing. Some of the pros, everything that I've touched on. Some of the cons, supervision challenges. If you go to Kennedy, they have 5 times as many students, but probably 10 times as much staff as we have. And they have a very weird setup to their building. There's hallways, just not weird setup. There's hallways everywhere, and every time you look down, there was a staff member sitting there supervising. We're going to go and this is how I'll just answer that question before I move on. Right now we have 1, maybe 2 adults on supervision at all times for lunch. A lot of the times Mr. Wolf and I are moving around and we're doing different things. We have 1 para that is her sole purpose during that time. She has no other responsibilities at that given time. We would have 6 to 10 adults available each of these 30-minute blocks to supervise lunch around the building. So even though it's a more open concept, we have a much larger force to help with that. We want to make sure that the staff is not feeling like this is just another thing we're throwing at them, because we're already pretty successful with comment time and we can still use that same idea within those tutorials. We feel like it's an easier transition, but we still need to make sure that we address that. We're putting an extraordinary amount of trust in our students in this 60 minutes to do the right thing and to be responsible and upstanding students. And we feel like we know we have those students here, but still the transition to something like this is going to take some time. And we rely on Kennedy a lot in those conversations. We had a lot of good dialogue from student to student while we were there. And somewhat takes away from the homeroom concept we have of seeing those same group of 15 to 20 kids every day. Real quick, I'm going to show you what this shakes out to be as a teacher schedule, just so you kind of can visualize that, and then I think I'll be wrapping up. So if you look at the very top line, line 2 there, I guess, a math teacher's week during Smart Lunch would look like this. On Monday, they would have tutoring responsibilities. They would offer a tutorial for their classes for that first 30 minutes. The second 30 minutes would be their lunchtime. Tuesday, they would supervise a tutorial. So they would be around the building at predetermined spots along with some of our paraeducators for supervision purposes, and then they would eat B lunch. On Wednesday, they have an open period. They can have a working lunch with their PLC team. They could all eat lunch and then meet for a 30-minute meeting of content team, but that would be designed for them to meet as a content team. On Thursday, they eat A lunch, and then they would be in charge of their tutorials for their classrooms on B lunch, or B tutorial, excuse me. And then Friday is an open hour for them for extra prep time. So that visual can give you a visualization of what a teacher's situation would look like, and we have all of our content areas put in there just as a mock-up to see what that might look like. So some of the things that we got. How will we measure the success? Obviously, the impact that this has on student grades, the course pass rates. I don't think I even have this up there. They're not only their attendance in tutorials, but also their enrichment time that they're receiving. I asked Cedar Rapids Kennedy about discipline referrals during Smart Lunch, and I was expecting to hear somewhat of a high number, but he said after they got a clue after 2 weeks, and they really saw how it benefited them. And it was a transition period, but once students figured out that this really could benefit them, they've dropped down to a very small amount of discipline referrals. And then surveys, just getting feedback from students and teachers if this is working. So what do we need? We need some of these arbitrary things, different signs, trash cans, additional seating. Some of those things we'd have to move some tables around. You can see here that we have a lot of tables offered. This type of setup is nice for Smart Lunch, but we also don't want food in our library. So can we offer this type of setting other places in our building. Additional space, updated protocol for students that have open campus, and then some of the other things we would want in the future. Obviously, the new informational commons would be this would be utilized really well in that particular area. In fact, if Kennedy told us if they had one thing that they really needed to make this thing improve was more of an open foyer, open commons area, they don't have it. So they've tried to create one, and it lasted about 6 weeks, and they scrapped their plans for that. So a lot of stuff, a lot of information. This is a group of teachers and then the student team that we've put together. We're very much in the exploratory aspect of this, but we have not heard a single person involved. And I've talked to just about every staff member that hasn't been here that visited. I've talked to them in some capacity about it, and we've gotten nothing but good feedback. So we're looking at trying to pilot this sometime during third trimester, see if it's something we want to continue moving with. But we're going to have a lot of meetings coming up with this group and really whoever wants to be involved as we try to look at it, improving that intervention and enrichment time for our kids. So something outside of the box a little bit, but it's generating some excitement, and we feel good about that. So I don't know how long I took, but it was too long. So any questions quickly, or any other time you can ask me to.
Are you looking at testing this or implementing it yet this year?
Yeah, third trimester.
Third try.
Sometime after spring break.
Do you
We've got a lot of planning to do yet before we do.
Do you think you'd be looking at a change in the open lunch for the seniors to, I guess maybe you'll know more after you test it?
Cedar Rapids Kennedy offers it for juniors and seniors. And as soon as we mention that to juniors, it's kind of we better wait and see type of approach for that. We'll keep a similar approach. We'll actually, in a way, have to tighten up the open lunch for the seniors a little bit, just have a little bit more of a check-in, check-out type policy. But we definitely want to keep that for a lot of reasons. But by the time these kids are seniors, we want to be able to offer that to them, and this can even improve that. So yes.
This
Very
makes
interesting.
Makes me think of when we were in Albert Lee of how they had gone to small lunch trays and just paper. The pizza was just put on a piece of
Like wax paper.
or parchment paper, and the fries were just put in a disposable thing. So all they had laying around was these small serving trays. That's
Everything's
everything else was disposable.
We did notice that at Kennedy too.
They do the same there?
They did make some changes to their lunch system about how they would, just more mobile lunches type of things. When we take the next step in planning, I'll be talking to the food staff about how this might impact what they do. I don't anticipate many changes in that area this year.
No.
Especially for a 2 to 3 week trial period, but we got to get them on board too. They got to be informed, so we'll be going there as well.
Looks exciting.
Yes,
That is
very exciting. Thank you much.
Very good. Moving on to agenda item 8, transportation center plans. Is that you or Jerry?
Yes.
Jerry, come on up.
Are you awake?
Dr. Cox is losing his voice as the evening progresses, so you're up.
Sounds great. The handout. Is the handouts all in there?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I think you got, I'm going to pull out mine too, so I guess I can sort of walk through them. Should have approximately, I think, 4 different handouts here. Couple of site plan layouts, building layout, and then so elevations. So I guess what I've got for you is, I would call the one plan, and I'm not sure what order you have them in, but the one plan is where the
We
bus.
got the floor plan first.
Okay, so the floor plan of the building, all right, so we can walk through that. As you're looking at it on the thing, the far left, as you're looking at, is the wash bay. The next 2 bays are 2 working bays with a tool storage area right next to the working bays. And then you go into a storage room for all the anything that Kurt would keep on hand, filters, oils, things like that, into a storage room. Hallway to come in with an office. Be a little tweaking. This is, like I talked to Dr. Cox about, we'll probably separate that office into 2 offices, one for me and one for my transportation specialist, so I can have some, if I need to do any conversations or meetings or things like that. Right now, we're all in one big open area, and sometimes that doesn't work real great. Across the hall is a nice big break room for bus drivers when they come in. When we get all put every Friday morning, we meet with them and get all the plans for the next week for all of the trips that we have and everything like that. 2 restrooms and a mechanical room off of that. And the next large area after that is for vehicle storage. If you look at this, there's the same doors on both sides, overhead doors. So into the wash bay, there's a 12 by 12 door going in, out on both sides. On the 2 work bays, there's a 12 by 12 door going in and out, both sides. And then on the vehicle storage, there's 3 10 by 10 doors going in and out, both sides. We'll have this with cameras, keyless entry, so when the staff have a vehicle, we'll have it ready next to the doors. They swipe in, their car will be ready, off they go. I won't have to have them sit outside, scrape windows for them and everything else before they go. So this is the building layout that we've designed. Dr. Cox and I have worked on this a little bit. Scott and Anderson, which is Gary Anderson, who we work with quite a bit on a lot of other projects in the past before I've even started, and I've worked with him now pretty extensive on some other projects that were coming up here, has designed this. Once we get this pretty much finalized, we'll make any little changes or anything, and if we get it approved, we'll get it finalized and get it out for bid so we can get going on it. So that's the building design that we have currently. Got a couple little changes, like I said, the office, and if there's anything else anybody else has some comments on. So that's the building design.
I got a comment on your doors, Jerry. I wonder, as long as you've got a 16-foot sidewall, if you wouldn't be happier in the long run if things get taller or whatever else for a 14-foot door instead of a 12.
We talked about that.
As long as you've got a sidewall in the
Right.
building enough anyway to do
Right.
it, I would think maybe at least one of them would be up.
Sure.
Because you're allowed 13.6 legal height, and you get 12 foot,
Sure.
you won't get them in if the bus can go any taller.
Sure. And we do have a couple buses that are taller, like our C bodies on our
Yeah.
Thomas buses are definitely a little taller than a Bluebird or an International, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wondered if
Sure.
maybe why you're doing it to make them 2 foot taller.
Well, I'm telling you, the wish list of my mechanic was
Yeah.
a 14 by 14 door. It was, so, we put it down for, if
Yeah,
there's cost or
cost-wise,
anything
I
like that, but
understand that, but-
that's an option that we could do with 14 by 14s, and if it falls within our budget, we can go with it. If
Or
not,
even
then.
12 by 14, 14
Sure.
high at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. So.
At
good
least
point.
on the wash bay and one of your work bays,
Yeah.
both doors.
Sure.
I would think so.
Okay.
I
Take a
think
look
you're
at it.
making a mistake
Okay.
trying to get by with 12-foot doors.
Okay.
What we can do with that, though, is when we get ready for bidding, those could be alternates.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Hope for bids
So
that
that
come in.
we have an idea
Yep.
of what the cost differential is.
Absolutely.
And if we're within budget to do that, or.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think it'd be more reasonable now than 5 years from now, or 3 years
Correct.
from now, to get a taller bus.
Sounds good. We'll make that note and we'll
Okay.
definitely talk to Gary
just a
about that. Okay, great, thank you.
The next one we have, Jerry, is the elevation.
Okay, the elevations, great. All right, if you look at this just sort of gives the outline, so you can see what we're talking about. As I mentioned, the doors and all that, if you noticed, where the 3 smaller doors are for the vehicles, then the door next to it will be where the proximity reader would be, so staff, when they go in and get automobiles, they'd swipe in there. Every time someone swipes in the door, it's registered, just like any of the school buildings are now. That way it's all monitored on computer access and everything. We're also going to definitely look at cameras inside and outside of this building. We just want to conform with everything that we're trying to do in all of our buildings and all of our facilities. Then the next 2 large overhead doors are the 2 work bays. The last one is the wash bay. Okay. If you notice, there's intake hoods that we have to have because of the vehicles that we have inside. Then also on the end elevation there, another intake hood on the end also, which is on the end of the wash bay. Okay.
How much, I happened to notice today, I was up there, and you go to the tech building, that ground up there where you use for a parking lot's pretty level. And today, that soup is all sitting on top of it.
Mhm.
You're gonna raise this building, what, a foot or two above the present levels? So you
Yeah,
got
I
water
know,
so you can run
I know
away
that's
from it?
something that Gary has definitely talked to me
Yeah.
about. We're also gonna talk about if it's in our budget or not to go ahead and pave all that too. I mean, that's gonna be an alternate that we're probably gonna put on to see where we're at with it. We're hoping that, if it's a competitive bid, we might be able to get most of it paved also. So if we can do that, that would help tremendously, so, yeah, that
I know
parking
you don't
lot's,
wanna-
yeah,
make sure
that
you don't
parking
build it
lot's.
in a hole to start with, 'cause you
If
can't
you
do
look at
much
my
about it.
shoes, how they are, that's because of the Bus Barn
Yep.
parking lot, so
I
that's,
was out
that's
there
what I
today,
walk
just-
through, and that's what all the drivers walk through and everything, so it went from very slippery this morning with a little bit of snow we had to now mush, so, absolutely, it'd be very nice if we could, but yeah, yep, so, okay.
Next is option 1.
Option 1, which is, let's see, can you help me out with option 1? Is it
The
the
north-south.
north-south?
The north-south,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so option 1, the north-south building. That one is with the phase 1 that we're talking about, that we just looked at the floor plans of, running north and south. And then with phase 2 overlapping on top of the current bus barn. And if you notice, it goes onto the track right now. We talked to Gary a little bit about that. We're moving that to, and he didn't have time to adjust that for us because he didn't even see when he laid it out for us that it went over the track. We're moving everything to the south. The reason we can do that, originally he thought maybe we would want a driveway on the south side of the new bus barn facility, but I told him we don't need with doors in and out, and also with the space between phase 1 and phase 2, we don't need a driveway on the south, so we can move that 35 foot to the
Okay.
south. We're still within our, so we don't have to file for an easement from the city for that. Once all these plans are finalized and everything, Gary and I plan on meeting with the city, with John and the city administrators to make sure they're okay with it. So this is phase 1. This is, to me, a very good layout. If you look at where the parking is on phase 1, it shows, when we do phase 2, the parking's on the west side of the building, which to me is very good with, if, say, a bus driver comes in late at night from an activity and they park their bus into the farthest west stall. On this one, the parking lot where they could park their car is close to that entire phase 2 project. Once we look at site plan number 2, the parking lot gets quite a ways away. So, so that's maybe some differences, and I'm sort of leading you to what I'm sort of thinking here, but we'll look at the next one first before we discuss any more of it. So that's sort of layout, what I call the north-south layout. So next one, which is what I call the east-west layout. If you see that one, the east-west, both buildings run east-west, phase 1 and phase 2. Parking's on the east side of both buildings, and exactly what I was talking about before. If a bus driver comes in at night and has to park way over on the west end of the long phase 2 barn, then you're talking the parking's down here. The other thing on first site plan is, you know, we still are big into soccer on that area. We want to keep as much of the soccer as we can. We do have room. If everyone's looking at it saying, well, phase 2 goes quite a ways on the soccer, those fields can be moved down to the west a little farther. I've looked at it, took the measurements from where we're at and where we could move them to. That also gives parking for people that come and watch soccer, because if anyone's been out there on a Saturday morning during soccer season, that bus barn is packed with cars, and they park all the way around college grounds also for soccer. So that also creates more parking right up next to the soccer fields for people to sit in their cars and watch on a cold, rainy Saturday morning. So anyway.
It looks to me, Jerry, like you've taken both plans just fit on the piece of property we have, ideally. And it's my opinion that you should give us a recommendation as to which you feel.
My
would be
recommendation would be phase 1, the north-south.
And that's printed on your agenda.
Okay.
Dr. Cox
Yep.
is making that recommendation as well.
Yep, Dr. Cox and I met, and we thought that was the best layout for safety for the drivers, safety for people parking to come and get cars. Eventually, when hopefully we build phase 2, it blocks the wind and everything from the entire complex. So our recommendation is phase 1 with the north-south bus garage.
Looks great.
So we're still looking at, this is approved tonight, we would move forward with these blueprints, specifics.
Yep.
City building permits, et cetera, get this bid out and have construction this summer?
Correct, that's our plan.
And potentially even have it ready by the time school starts this fall?
That's our plan.
Is that still my understanding?
Yep.
Okay.
And Gary thinks it's our architect thinks it's very doable. So,
Okay.
Awesome.
Any
you like a
further
motion?
discussion, or is there a motion? You bet.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the plan. You got anything to say?
Don't bother, Lorraine.
Never mind. Go for it, Jim.
I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the plan presented by Jerry and recommended by the administration.
I'll
And
second.
Lorraine seconded
I'll
that
second
motion.
that.
Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote.
Maycumber?
Yes.
Winnering?
Did you say my name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Jim's over here doing this. I couldn't
Motion
hear.
carried, 4-0.
thank you very much.
Moving on to, where are we? Agenda item 10.
10.
Board development follow-up. I keep skipping around here. This is in your packet. Do you want to do this or me?
Go ahead.
Okay. On Monday, December 1st, we had the Iowa Association of School Boards with us in a board development workshop, and they have sent us the information that they compiled from that workshop. The question is from the Iowa Association of School Boards and Mary Jane Venz, are these standards that she's outlined in this document of behavior, can we all agree upon them? And where are those standards? These? Yes? I've seen this document numerous times, but it's, to find what I want when I need to, it's difficult. The board must respect the professional expertise of the superintendent and staff, asking good questions and thoughtfully considering recommendations. The board must act as a whole board with clarity of purpose, working together toward the mission, uniting around commonly held messages. The third, the board must communicate and determine priorities and ends and give shared direction as a whole board, recognizing that individual board members do not have authority except at the board table. And the fourth would be the board must respect each other's time and focus work at the board table around discussion, which allows the board to make effective decisions to realize the district's mission and goals. Discussion, comments, questions? Are these standards of behavior that we can all agree upon based upon our experience with other boards and going to Iowa Association of School Board conventions and seminars and et cetera?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say that it's our practices at this time.
I feel like we are doing a lot of these things currently and would agree with these goals, these standards.
I think we do all of these
Yeah.
things currently, actually.
Yeah.
We definitely strive towards them.
In various
Yeah.
degrees.
And then the other question would be, might we profit from a quarterly review to see if these standards are working and if others might be needed? Or is that something that we just self-monitor and make changes in course as we need? Do we
You
want to
know-
have discussions quarterly, every half a year, yearly, or just course corrections as needed?
You know, I feel like the fall event that we went to in Mason City. You know, later this week, we're going to go to do some professional development as a board. And the school board convention, you know, maybe having IASB maybe one time a year here in our own district to talk about something is, I think it's helpful, but I don't personally feel that we need quarterly visits with them to discuss some of this. I think we do a lot of that already.
Jim?
Comment.
Well, this doesn't say that they would come quarterly, just a quarterly review
That we could do as a board,
at the board table.
have a board conversation or discussion?
Because they charge us something when they come up.
No.
Yes, they do.
They do?
Yeah.
I thought that was free. No, we've been getting bills.
Yes, it was free, but yes, they do bill us.
Because?
Here's what it was never discussed that we were gonna be charged a fee. So the fee was waived, but there is a fee to have it done.
Okay.
So.
For them to come.
Yes.
So I dodged a bullet.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Very good. So we don't necessarily need them to have a self-evaluation or
Okay.
conversation.
No, we don't need them to
Yes.
do that, but
No.
do we need to be quarterly or
Semi-annual.
semi-annually reviewing to see how are we doing at this?
Our goals.
Semi-annual, I think.
I would say yes,
Quarterly or semi-annual?
at least twice a year.
Okay, I do too.
Right. That's why we brought them up, is to help with the whole process of, you know, what's the board, what's the superintendent and other staff, what's somebody else issue, and so to say, nope, we're good, we got it all.
And then to have confrontation or
Yeah.
wonder, question.
I think a periodic review and maybe twice a year is good enough.
And then the standards that you worked on, Scott, when are those, have you been given any indication they
I
kept in
have
common?
not seen when those standards,
I don't know if
did
any,
they discuss
and you
those
took the
at the
time.
convention?
Yes, and I went in and they offered, I took part in a survey to review those and look at those. They are very good. And I would like to take those once they come out, and those become what we actually do quarterly, because they really do give you, basically, it's an instruction manual on being a board member. I think it answers a lot of questions that we might not get anywhere else.
I would, if you were gonna do it twice a year, it would make, I guess, just my opinion, if you did something in November or December, you would cover right after an election, so that new people coming on have some idea of how things work. And then if you do the other one 6 months later, it's a review. But that would just be one option.
Yeah, and yet, you know, right after that election, they always have something scheduled in the fall in Mason City that we've taken advantage of that kind of schools any of those new board members. And then, yeah, November is the IASB convention.
So, that's one option. What do you want to do?
You know, maybe,
There's no action here, it's just consensus again.
maybe even before, as the school year starts, prior to the school year.
How about PRN?
Twice a year is
As
needed,
needed. Mhm.
based upon board members and/or administration.
If a board member comes, I mean, I suppose we would have a fall to date if nobody requested it, but at the superintendent's discretion, at the board president's discretion.
You have suggestions down there to my left?
6 months sounds good to me.
Do you have a preference as to when that every 6 month period starts?
It's just well started on a school year. Yeah, just put
September,
that in hand.
August?
Yeah.
Yeah, July or August, and
July or
then
August,
6
and
months
then
later.
April, May? or-
We only have one board meeting typically in July or August.
When have we been
Okay,
typical?
we'll figure something out. Moving on. Agenda item 11. I still have to go back to the office. Consideration of consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Geit,
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Winteringer.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. You want me to do these? Yeah. Agenda item 12, important upcoming dates. Wednesday this week, there's the IASB District 3 meeting at Sumner Fredericksburg High School at 5:30 p.m. I believe all board members except myself are attending. Thursday, January 29th this week is the 500 North Grand meeting at 5:30 in the middle school cafeteria. Monday, February 9th, regular board meeting, and Monday, February 23rd is the regular board meeting, both at 6:30 in the middle school cafeteria. Any
Scott?
other?
Yeah, on Wednesday, the 28th, Lorraine and I meet with support staff and the teachers.
Oh, we continue with negotiations.
Negotiations.
Yes, that's true, I
at
forgot
4
that.
And 4:15.
If there's nothing else, we will declare the meeting adjourned at 9:14.
Okay.